Hey, I was gonna do a video reply to the Tomb of Lime,
Me too.
and yep, so we're doing it together. This is a video response to a video response because yeah, those are fun. And there was some really interesting stuff that Tomb of Lime and Matt from Black Lodge Games both were saying here with uh, classical platonism and other way higher brow stuff than most people talk about with RPGs. but I'm sure we'll talk about normal stuff too. But you know, it's the we're going really to the root of why does any of this conversation even matter in the first place. So now I'm gonna let Matt speak for a bit, and then you can tell me whenever you want to pause, and
Okay.
we can talk about something, and then I'll do the same.
After my video last week about the platonic form of RPGs, the Indomitable Black Lodge Games posted their video about first principles of RPGs. In it, they do talk about how mechanics can't fix, problems that shouldn't even really be there if you don't have your principles down right, which I agree with. They even mentioned Plato at one point. Plato's doctrine of the forms. There was this idealized version of every concept.
Almost thinking in this like sort of Platonist, like the idealized procedures.
And they say other stuff that, they got other ideas that I totally agree with. There's something unique and special about each medium that if you got rid of it, it just wouldn't be a role-playing game anymore.
What is the unique thing that RPGs do that other mediums don't do?
Awesome. We're obviously on the...
Like, what is an RPG? I've been told for 30 years what RPGs are, and then when I go look at them, all I see are players doing party games.
Well, yeah, and
charades.
Even if you look in the books, 30 different books that call themselves RPGs. Look at their the section that they have on what is an RPG? How do you roleplay? They'll all say something different, right?
What's an RPG? And then they might have a sample game session.
Yeah, yeah. And not only does their sample game session look totally different than another book's sample game session, it looks totally different than how they actually play their game.
Yeah.
So,
I think you showed me the one in 5e. It actually has a decent actual play.
It's not bad. It's got some issues, right, in the sidebar,
I think the DM says you, but other than that, the players are in character.
Yeah, the players are doing so. Same thing with Pathfinder's explanation on how to role play. It's just it's very simple. You describe the thing, and then I talked to James Jacobs in person at one of the playtests for Pathfinder Second Edition. About modules, and he was like, well, yeah, obviously you don't run it exactly as we wrote it, otherwise it wouldn't really, it's not going to work for every table. That would be ridiculous to it's like, okay, then why do people do that? You've got the designers here telling you, no, of course, if you want to run something that's not railroaded, you have to make modifications to it.
Well, a lot of the game designers used to be customer support.
Mm-hmm.
They were the operator standing by, answering questions, the 900 numbers you call. Asking questions. They probably got tired of complaints from customers, and they would just say, well, just play however you want. It's your game. Do what you want.
Yeah.
But then they get hired or promoted as a game designer, and they still have that same mindset. Mindset where the customer gets to make up their own rules, how they're going to play the game. It's up to you how you do it. We can't make you play a certain way.
Yeah. And that's, that goes along with like some of what they talk about with wargaming, and it's like, well, that itself is very different, right? I'm jumping a little.
War games are very different.
But they start talking about like, well, war games are a role playing game is basically a war game with it. It's like, well, it's really not, because if you just started modifying how your I've decided the Germans have a nuke right now on the fly, and it's like, well, hang on, that's not going to work. One, we don't have rules for that. Two, we don't. That's not accurate to what actually happened. Three, that's not. They've brought up 40 issues all of a sudden that could be role played away in a role playing game, but you can't do that in a war game because you're not role playing a war game.
Yeah, most war games that I played, they were based on historical fact at the time. So each side had the right number of armies and all that kind of stuff, and the supplies and the morale and the fog of war. That was all simulated.
Yep.
But these things all came down to what if games.
Yeah. Yeah.
What if the Germans did win Berlin or whatever, or win Moscow or win Stalingrad? Those are what if. I mean, that's what the war games are for. Maybe the Germans do win in someone's war game. It's a what if thing. And then there's an optional rule. What if the Germans also have heavy water and they're making nukes that they can send over to the UK? Stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That would be an optional rule in the back of the book, because you have some players that are against adding stuff that wasn't in the history.
Yeah. Your armchair historians and whatnot.
Like, I don't know, did the Romans ever have elephants that they rode around on?
Possibly. They didn't use them in armies, though. Hannibal Barca, of the Carthaginians, they used elephants, but it was always a really surprising thing when he actually got elephants anywhere near Rome, because elephants are really bad at crossing the Swiss Alps.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But Hannibal managed it, allegedly. So
the Total War games from like 20 years ago, they would simulate the Trojan War or some war. The main thing is you had like 10,000 people running around on your real-time strategy computer screen. That was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But then they ran out of ideas and like, okay, Warhammer 40K, it's in Total War now. So that's a what if kind of a thing.
Well, Warhammer Fantasy.
It's fantasy? Okay.
Yeah. But yeah.
But I'll go on YouTube and watch people say, how many of these can fight against how many of these, and they hit the autoplay button.
Yeah. But, it's not really... Black Lodge commented on these, and I'll scroll down to it so you can see. No, it was Max that said, I don't think it's correct to say that role-playing games are at least in part war games. I think it would be more accurate to say war games can sometimes contain role-playing, which I think is a pretty, that's fairly accurate, yeah.
Yeah, you got, even in Risk.
Yeah.
You got the armchair generals, making pacts with other armchair generals. Don't attack me in Irkutsk,
Yeah.
Leave me alone in the Urals, and I'll leave you around in, I'll leave you alone in Africa, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Or, making plays that don't exactly make sense. They aren't the best plays, but they're the things that, that would have happened. Like, for the reasons that wars do happen. That's an issue with a lot of war games is people, if you're always making the exactly correct plays, then you don't do things like, it's really stupid to attack Greece as Italy, but that's what Italy did, and Italy had its reasons for doing it. That's, or, with what's going on.
Were they using dice like in Risk?
In some of the historical war games, it depends. A lot of the times it was just, the only historical war game I know of very well is the U.S. French war games, I believe, or it might have been U.S. Canadian, where they would do war games with tanks, and they would have the tanks unloaded, and basically like every 5 to 10 minutes you would have an officer come out and just point at a group of people and go, you're dead because this, that, and the other reason. And they would have planes fly over and drop bags of flour, and if the flour bag hit your tank, that tank's gone, and stuff like that. But you basically had to have two referees refereeing both sides, and
you'd have to, yeah.
Yeah, well, this guy's out in the open, and it's like, well, his tank's got, plenty of armor, so it doesn't matter that it's out in the open. It could take those hits. No, it couldn't, because we've got... and then, you go on and on about that. And you see that stuff happening in some people's... a lot of people's RPGs, where they, and I used to be there. I, break down and argue about the rules. No, that sword wouldn't go through my armor. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I'd read the rules and then say, well, I guess it's not a simulation, so we just have to live by what the rules say.
Yep. Yep.
And then you have to have a suspension of disbelief going on.
Yeah, and then something I won't spoil this because it's another live stream Rick wanted to do is that's something you talk about in session zeros, right?
Yeah.
What's the is it going to be more simulationist? Is it going to be more on the fantasy end of things, right? And if you have things that are like that's something you can explain retroactively too, you know. It's like, yeah, that guy's stabbed clean through your plate armor, and then after you end up killing him or whatever, it turns out he's got a cool special sword that, like, whatever that seal is they use in a Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones. It's escaping my mind right now. But you know, it looks like normal steel, but it cuts straight through stuff, no problem.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah. I'm trying to think what the board games used to be called for that game. It wasn't called Game of Thrones, right? Until the TV show.
Yeah,
it had a different Song of
the Song of Ice and Fire. Yeah.
And then there was Westeros.
Yeah.
That was the name of one of the board games, I think.
But yeah, let's continue with the video.
On the same wavelength about all this stuff. So, you know, like, hey, what's up? You know, if you ever want my take on something, just, you know, I'm right here. In the latter part of the video, they brought up a blog by a guy called Rule of Thule. And I thought partly because my profile picture is the King of Thule, but partly because I think there's more to be said, I decided I'd take a look at it as well. So let me drink my proverbial wine and throw myself into the proverbial sea. So first off, Rule of Thule's blog is great. And it's very well written. And if you're interested in game design, I would definitely go and check it out. Links in the description below. You know, I think it encourages something that I try to encourage in people as well, and that is to sort of question the base axiomatic beliefs that you have about things, and in this case about role-playing games. So he has a heading in there that's tabletop role-playing games are at least war games, and he sort of brings up this historical scenario where the commander of a certain army might put themselves in the role of the enemies in order to better understand them so that they can defeat them. Already, we can see that war games contain the seeds of the TTRPG. Just as the Roman commanders envisioned what events might transpire with their barbarian foes, so too can we imagine the events and conditions of some other world. I think this kind of puts the cart before the horse, though. I think because Dungeons and Dragons has this actual, you know, historical precedent where it arose out of war games. Like Chainmail and then the Braunstein.
D&D. The D&D is setting. Setting is system, system is setting. So a lot of people get confused. They think D&D is Lord of the Rings, or they think D&D is Conan, or they think D&D is the cartoon Dungeons and Dragons, which had kids at a carnival. But if you read AD&D First Edition, you realize, oh, well, it's just a game, and these are the different classes you can use to adventure with. Mm-hmm. Later on, they came out with settings for D&D. Mm-hmm. But people need to know. D&D, the setting for D&D is gain XP, level up, and count your hit points. You know, that kind of thing.
The mechanics tell you about how the world works.
That's the D&D setting right there.
The mechanics are sort of the game engine and therefore the physics engine, right? You know, they're by having, you know, 5th edition has a ton of hit points. It tells you that, okay, the things in this world don't work the way they do in our world. Things are way healthier, and it doesn't matter what setting you put on top of 5e. Any setting you run in is going to be way healthier than, you know, anything else.
Yeah, and swords are basically just modifiers to what you're attacking with.
Yeah, it's so if you try to describe things and run things as if they are more real world. In 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, everything's going to feel like it's a wiffle ball bat. And that's like the most commonly described complaint with 5th edition is that the health points are friggin' gigantic, and that, you know, regardless of whether or not you like hit points at all, 5th edition shows the absolute worst of them, I think.
Yeah, I try to use games that have minimal health points, so you can die easy. You don't necessarily level up, and there's definitely no XP in my games.
Yeah, I don't like XP either, but that's a topic for another video. But
But I teach new players what you can use instead of XP. Like your character gains reputation, wealth, status, that kind of thing.
yeah,
Not powers.
yeah. I think he's totally you're, I'm gonna ignore that because you're, again, that's another topic for another video, is powers and feats and all that. But I think he's totally right here about putting the cart before the horse, because it's kind of a non sequitur, isn't it? Because ancient Romans could imagine their enemies, we can imagine entire different worlds and characters. I mean, yeah, I guess that's technically true, but
It's what if?
it's kind of like saying, well, we can turn milk into cheese, so you know, a milkshake must be, you know, cheese. No.
What would Plato say about that? My
Platonic
my dad hated hyperboles.
yeah,
He wouldn't talk about anything that's imagination. You know, he wouldn't talk about.
Plato is well, he's a classical, of course, but I mean, he would fit most in line with modernist philosophy, with the Platonic solids, which is basically a triangle is a triangle, a square is a square, and you can apply that to everything. You know, if something has a name for it, somebody is going to picture immediately a thing in their mind that is that. If I tell somebody this is a war game, they'll imagine, even your average person that's not in, you know, the very niche 4D space that we're in, the average person, if you tell them it's a war game and you tell them it's a role-playing game, they'll have two different, you know, or a tabletop RPG or what have you, they'll imagine two different things in their head, right?
Yeah.
So they're not exactly war games, right? Even if it goes to the very basic.
Well, they're board games. If you
you could.
If
say
you're talking
board
about
games.
TTRPG, that's a board game.
Yeah, like we
People
could say
are painting their
board games,
minis for a reason, I suppose.
but you know, at the very base, you know, baseline level, you could make the differentiation of, well, only one of you is controlling multiple characters.
I would say that TTRPGs are just algorithms that later got put into computers.
Yeah, you could make that argument.
Yeah, mainframes were full of adventure
Because
games.
I mean, if you look at the random encounter tables and all of that, that's basically if X go to Y, and you know.
Yeah, random number generator, D12, integer, parentheses, random, times 0. Whatever.
You know, you see a lot of the Dungeon Master not stopping to think about, you know, I'll occasionally use a random table if it's a good random table, and that's, you know, that's if. But
I like random tables that are weighted.
Yeah.
So some numbers don't get rolled as often as the other ones.
So it's not just totally gonzo all the time, unless that's what you're going for.
Yeah, up in the road is a civilian or a thief or a minotaur, or, you know, they all have equal weight on the chart.
And you're thinking, like, what's a minotaur doing in the middle? And then the DM, because the DM randomly rolled it, is going, oh crap, I don't know what a minotaur is doing here.
Yeah.
But, you know, if I'm like stuck somewhere, I think the issue though is when people are, for everything they have to roll something, right? It's, you know, have you not thought about the world at all? You know, around every corner is, you know, you can hear the hard drive seeking because it hasn't loaded the next room yet. That's what I see whenever a DM's, you know, looking in their book through the random encounter tables.
Well, what's the new tabletop game that everyone's playing? Dragon something?
Not Dragonlance.
It's not Dragon Slayer, is it?
Maybe. There's Dragon Slayer and then Dragon the other one. I can't remember.
Anyway, the one that everyone's playing now online,
Yeah.
the Dungeon Master or GM or whatever they're called does random encounter tables
Mm-hmm.
and random mapping
Mm-hmm.
every turn.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
no one knows what the world is until it's the next round, and then they roll to see what's in the hex up ahead.
Yeah, yeah. And the Hyper Light Drifter tabletop RPG, which is it's an RPG based on the video game of the same name. It's got some interesting things to it. It's a D20 system, but you change what success means for your character. So
Change?
yeah, it's very weird. So instead of D20 add modifiers and stuff, you lower or raise what the average DC is, and then very weird the way that the mechanics
So instead
work.
of adding to your die roll, you're adding or subtracting from the target number.
Yeah, effectively, yeah.
Moving target numbers, not a fan.
Yeah, it's weird. I like that critical hits could move in that way. That was kind of interesting. But so you could have a character that was unusually lucky, but on average wasn't very good.
I like target numbers that move before the die roll.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
after the die roll, you start moving the target number?
No,
Forget
moves,
that
it
nonsense.
moves beforehand. It's fixed on your character sheet. So, but yeah, but it worked in that way of when you were visiting what effectively would be a dungeon. It's not a medieval fantasy, but when you're visiting like a tech ruin or something like that, each room has it's semi-randomly generated, but
Yeah,
the class
it's got like a room, and then it has like sub. I guess you can call it a module, and then sub modules.
yeah, yeah,
Like a ruin would have a barrel or something,
yeah,
and the barrel, instead of having pure random stuff, it only contains stuff in the barrel that would belong in that room.
yeah. But it made it was interesting, but it made it kind of tricky to describe stuff as the GM because there's like a scout class which can basically pick what the next room is, so, co-creation stuff, which I thought was kind of cool, but it made it to where it's like, but
Is
then
it a T? Is it a T section or a long hallway,
but
or is it
but now the GM is in like reaction mode instead of that it kind of stops their ability to plan 2 steps ahead of things, and so it led to more, I felt, reliance on tables because you're like, well, I don't know, I don't want to just say something here because I don't know what's in this room. They know what's in this room. So it felt kind of choppy the way that the players and the GM traded creation in it.
Yeah, the narration. Who says what first?
Yeah.
It's like it's our turn to narrate what we found.
Yeah.
And then what does the GM do about it?
Yeah. Because they even had like it was something that was kind of interesting, but I like the direction that it was going, but I'm not sure I like the way that they did the execution of it, which is that it's chopped up it's a game like Mini, which is chopped up into phases. So you have your your combat phase, your exploration phase, your diplomacy phase, that sort of thing.
Oh, okay.
And
Like a board game.
yeah, but depending on the class of the character you were playing, you narrated that given phase. So you traded GMs depending on what phase it was in.
Okay, that's weird.
Yeah, it's very strange. Yeah. So we didn't play it that way because we were like, that's really... we will have to attempt that someday, but that's
Someone
really
will figure out that
weird.
a certain class has
It
basically
gets to be GM
initiative.
for half the game, yeah.
If you pick the right class, you get to narrate the best stuff at the right time.
Well, because we ended up totally avoiding combat, so we were like, I was like, well, man, I'm kind of glad because I would have never GM'd in the first place if we had been using those rules because I was playing the warrior class.
So the bard finds all the taverns.
Yeah, I guess so. Just never ending up anywhere. But yeah, back to the blog article.
Thing, that tabletop role-playing games in general are dependent on war games in a way that D&D was, but I think actually war games and tabletop role-playing games have more like a common ancestor. They're both dependent on an underlying, well, maybe first make-believe, but they both sort of spring up from human imagination. Imagination is a survival mechanism. Humans use it so that we can play out scenarios in our head without actually engaging in them, and it can help us in our decision-making process. It's like l'appel du vide, the call of the void. This phenomenon where, if you're standing at a very high place, like the edge of a cliff or something, and you get this sudden flash of an image of you leaping off the cliff to your own death, or steering into oncoming traffic, like this is a deeply entrenched psychological mechanism that helps us imagine something that might harm us so that we can actually avoid it. So we have it there in our imagination so that we don't have to find out the other way what it would be like. Over time, humans have grown to the point where we can kind of manipulate the mechanisms that we've got for other purposes, and imagination is one that we use in a lot of different ways. But yeah, I think its first application was for us to imagine ourselves in other situations, but we later were able to apply it so that we can imagine that we were someone else in a different situation. Or
it's important to note not everyone has this ability.
When you were a kid, were you ever asked, what would you do in this situation? Like if you were in a classroom, did the teacher ever ask you that?
Yeah.
Or ask the whole class?
Yeah.
Okay, class, who in this room, if you were given the choice, what would you do in this situation? And then each student gets a turn saying what they would have done.
Like, say you were the head of a factory and you had a choice of building, one really good product or a lot of so-so products, things like that. And you would consistently have in every single class, every time that question is asked, or just, go ask a bunch of people, you will always have at least one person, usually multiple, say, but I'm not. I'm not the head of the factory.
That would be my dad. He will not play those games.
Well, there's some people who won't. It's a principled thing, and they intentionally won't play a hypothetical. But some people legitimately can't. They can't hypothesize. They can't empathize. They can't put themselves in someone else's shoes. I remember someone playing at a game I ran.
Well, how would they? How would they say that? How would they say that about themselves then? Instead of saying, "I can't." Or are they actually saying, I can't?
Well,
I can't put myself in their shoes.
Oh, well, for this player, for example, they would say, I want to play a bard because I play the flute in real life. And I was like, well, you don't have to. I mean, the point of role-playing is kind of to play somebody that you're not, right? Most of the time. So you don't, I was like, I pointed to one of the other players and I was like, I don't think he can swing a sword around very effectively, but that's not the character he was playing. And they would say, well, I just don't know that I'd be able to, play a character that could do something that I couldn't do.
See, the problem I had was I couldn't role play a character if I didn't know anything about that character. Like, I didn't read fantasy books. Mm-hmm. I didn't read a whole lot of science fiction.
Yeah.
So, Hobbit, what does a Hobbit do? Yeah. I want to role play a Hobbit, but I've never seen the movie. I've never watched or read the books. I don't know what a Hobbit can do. What are they all about? I'll just play a human. That's what I'm familiar with.
But no,
if I'm familiar with the character, I'll role play the character.
Yeah, and it became a bigger issue, right? Because then they equivalate, what playing a flute in this world means with, the magical,
the Pied Piper.
Yeah, the magical music of the fantasy worlds, the historical.
Like you play the music and you boost the morale of your
yeah
companions and stuff.
Yeah, and or
Raise the dead, maybe.
yeah, all sorts of stuff. Snake charming stuff. It's like it's not something. If you're thinking you're just gonna play just gonna be a plain old flute player, you're not going to be particularly useful as a character, right? And you see this with people, playing the barista games where they get home from their job at Starbucks and then they play in a Dungeons and Dragons game where they
Seattle.
sit in a tavern all day, and it's like, what? I don't know if it's the routine like gets them stuck in a one note brain mode, or
Their studio apartment is the second floor of the Starbucks.
yeah, yeah. No, they or they go from working at the Starbucks in the Barnes and Noble just 50 feet over to
Oh, do they still have the Starbucks in those things?
yeah, a few of them. Yeah, but yeah, no, they yeah, that's a so that's an important thing to note when we and companies obviously have this incentive to push their game to absolutely everyone, but if we're assuming that an imagination and an ability to empathize or at least sympathize are required for role play, not everyone can do that.
Yeah.
Some people have to get those skills first before they come to your table.
I would ask my dad about Apollo 18, and he would say there's no such thing. He didn't want to talk about it. But I'd want to hypothesize, what if there were still Apollo missions? How many would we be up to by now? And he's like, we're not talking about this. Come on. I mean, he only wants to talk about stuff that he's worked on or is working on. It's like, well, okay, what if tomorrow you're asked to work for a company and they're bringing back the Apollos? They're going to have an orbiting moon base thing, something, and these Apollo command modules dock up to it. How would you design the docking ports on the station so that these command modules can all connect up to it before they send their lunar modules down to the moon? Whatever. I'm just hypothesizing. And he's like, it would never happen. They would never do it. I would never get called tomorrow morning to go work there. End of discussion. Like, man. So he never wanted to roleplay. Never.
Yeah, that's the problem I have with the personally with the 4D stuff, which is that I need more information. Anytime I'm asked those questions in an interview, I'm like, well, I need more context. You're gonna have to. Who am I working with? What's the mission? What's the goal of this particular mission? What's my budget? What are my constraints? Where?
But in a movie, you never see the characters go to the bathroom. You never really see them eat.
Unless it's important, right? It's
if it's a scene.
If in John Wick 2, I think. No, John Wick 1. You do see that guy going to the bathroom. He's flossing his teeth, and it's specifically there so you can see John in the background walking up behind him so he can start strangling him
with his own dental floss.
Yeah, and then smack his head into the sink, and it's a set piece, right? If you're going to the bathroom, it's because something's happening in the bathroom, or because you need to go to the bathroom in real life.
In Dirty Harry, the movie starts with him getting a hot dog.
Yeah.
He's eating a hot dog while he's shooting at some bank robbers.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a food scene.
Yeah.
Or you don't see them sleep.
Mm. Yeah,
they might go to bed, and then it's the next morning they're up and at him.
Yeah.
That's how I do my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to have my characters do spreadsheets, analytics.
Yeah.
They have to come up with the business model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because sleeping, that's a good point, because always you'll see, even in, I think, some otherwise good sessions, you'll have everybody's going to bed, and you have to have like a watch order, and you set up like, okay, we're going to go to bed first, you stay up for a couple more hours watch, then I'll wake up, and then you set this whole thing up, and then nothing ends up happening. So you've spent, you've spent 5 minutes organizing the watch order for it's like, oh, it was a dog.
Like in movies, you don't see the main characters doing their checking account.
Yeah. Yeah, what we call fantasy accounting. We always try to do that, after, between sessions if it needs to be done, not,
You don't know how characters make a living or get paid.
Yeah, somebody's buying, buying or selling some expensive good, and it's like, well, I have, the thing I want to buy is $10,000. I've got $5,000 and, 20 ounces of gold, and I need to, so I'm gonna go pawn some of this off, and it's like, okay, tell me that you've done all that in last session. I don't.
That all gets done off camera.
Yeah. You might see him walking out of the pawn shop with his, new gun or whatever it is he bought, but it's. Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of thematic stuff that I use in my games.
Mm-hmm.
Just this, because when you're listening to the game session, that's the interesting stuff.
Yeah.
When I saw Alien in the theater, what was the very beginning of that movie? Do you remember?
It's not when they're waking up to eat, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Okay.
And then they're complaining about, I think before that, they were complaining about being paid. Like overtime,
Yeah.
time and a half
Yeah.
for doing a rescue mission. This isn't on our contract. That was at the beginning of the movie. I thought that was the boringest part of the movie.
Yeah, it's not very memorable. No, it's
I don't care how these characters are getting paid or
Yeah.
if they're getting paid.
just set up and set dressing.
In 2001, the astronauts never said how economy works, who gets paid. Was it volunteer?
Yeah.
They get paid after the mission.
Yeah.
It's paid hourly. Because they're hours away from Earth as far as the radio signal. Are they getting paid when they're to wait there by the radio for a signal from Earth to let them know,
That's a good point.
to hear from their boss? If they talk to their boss, do they get paid for that? Because it's time delay. Stuff like that. Skip it in a cinematic film. You skip all that stuff.
Yeah.
Or in any situation, I'd say that, already we can see that imagination contains the seeds of make-believe and, which is a form of role-play. You've got to remember that although war games definitely preceded role-playing games, I think here we can see that role-play precedes them both. In role-play, we can see the seeds of role-playing games, and we can see the seeds of war games. I suppose it just doesn't become a game necessarily until you've got rules and maybe success and failure conditions.
Yeah, that's
But
really
you still have dice in role playing games.
It's very important to define what a game is, because lots of different people have attempted to define what a game is and argue about whether they succeeded or failed. Right, we can go back to I need to look up who wrote the book, but on Homos Ludens, Huizinga, Johann Huizinga, back in like the 1930s, about humanity the really unique thing about us, which we can argue about again today, not being anything in particular, like we stand upright and we throw rocks and real good, but that we can play and we can attempt to discover these complex ideas through play.
What do you think
But-
about humans that never played?
Yeah, exactly. Or rats
What-
that
what-
play, or it's
What does a human being look like if they've never played before?
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the people that can't imagine a thing if it hasn't happened to them before, right? It's there's there's lots.
Some
of
people want to play sports.
Yeah.
I was a sports person, but then I got bored of it. Okay,
Yeah.
I played football. I did the running back. I did the touchdowns. I was quarterback.
Yeah, because the rules don't change, right? The rules don't change, and
Around that time, I want to say Canada had a football team, and they changed it from 100 yards to 110 yards.
Yeah, and
or
then Vince
100.
McMahon was trying that XFL, the Extreme
Yeah,
Football League
yeah.
thing, and that fell through. But yeah, it's when you have something that's fairly young as a hobby or as a game, you can change the rules without pissing as many people off. um, uh,
But yeah,
I remember there was I can't remember when it happened, but in hockey, it didn't used to be that the goalie had to hold their hockey stick. So there was a guy that would put his hockey stick down on the on the rink in front of the goal and just you know try to block the puck with his hands. And that way, the other team had like a tiny little slot to get their puck in. But yeah, that would be an example of like somebody trying to win the game, you know, as a difference between a sports game or a war game and a role playing game. Because, you know, as he mentions, you know, when you're doing the role playing thing, you can imagine yourself jumping off of a cliff to your death, something that you would not do in real life, and something that you wouldn't do if you're trying to win the game of role playing.
well, there has to be consistency in the setting. There has to be consequences that you everything you do has a, you know, you push, the world pushes back. You don't just get to do willy-nilly stuff as a special snowflake, one of a kind character.
Yeah, and likewise in a war game, you know, the pushback would be you can complain to the developers to change the rules, but at the end of the day, the rules are the rules, and so the world doesn't really push back in that way. You know, you can't.
Well,
your
if you
opponent
use
might-
rules, you could use rule zero to the point where you removed all the rules from your
Yeah,
game.
yeah, yeah. And so we can, you know, we can look at a role playing game and really argue. Most definitions of what a game is, you have to have a success state. But a role playing game doesn't really. The success is playing it, right? And you'll see people argue that, oh well, The Sims, for the same reason, is not a game because there's no success state. You know, Minecraft until it
Sandboxes.
added,
They're just sandboxes.
yeah is
To me, those are what if.
yeah, so maybe role-playing game isn't even the right word for it, right? I mean, it's got mechanics like a game does. It's got a failure state like a game does. But there's
Which
no
one?
success state. Or you could argue the other, and you could argue that most definitions of game are wrong, and you don't have to have a success state for something to be a game. But
Well, there's a
then
guy
you-
on YouTube from like a year and a half ago who he did a video that there's no such thing as games, and he was trying to invent the very first game ever. And he argued how everything up to now is not a game, like Shoots and Ladders.
No, yeah.
He would argue that's not a game because your characters, the players have no control over their character in Shoots and Ladders or Snakes and Ladders. You're either going up a ladder or you're going down a
Yeah,
slide.
there's no player agency in that game. It's one of the worst designed ones. It's just
Or-
totally random.
Candyland, it's just
Yeah.
whatever square you land in, you have to do something, or
Even
pick a
Monopoly,
card.
you know, you have some choices that you can make, but you know, yeah, it's not really.
but I can't. It's been a while since I've seen his video, so I don't remember what he says a game actually is,
Yeah,
or if he ever finished his game.
yeah, but you know, that's again going back to the Platonic thing. There's the idea that we can define what a game is. Doesn't necessarily mean that if you meet all of the, if you tick all of the boxes that you've made something that's good. It just means you've made a game. So I think we're kind of, Thule is kind of getting into the weeds here with, is it or isn't an RPG that similar to a war game? Let's say it is, let's say it isn't.
He says RPGs are at least war games.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, okay, are they good then? Because the Platonic idea simply says a square is a square. It doesn't say whether that square is good at anything. He's not applying a values based judgment to those objects.
Maybe you could say a block came from a square,
Yeah, yeah,
or a cube came from a square,
yeah. But you know, it's.
or a sphere came from a circle.
Yeah, yeah. I guess what I'm trying to say is, what's the so what of are they or aren't they war
So
games?
buttons.
Yeah, yeah. What's the goal we're trying to get from this, right? So
Yeah, that's what I
that's
was thinking too when I was watching Black Lodge Games,
mhm,
going over this blog article.
Fool says, if TTRPGs are sprawling, disordered evolutions of war games, Second World exercises, then there is a final lingering question. Are they still necessarily games?
I thought he was going to say this. Oops, I think I've already covered all this.
I don't
I'd
know
say
what he
that
means by
TTRPGs
second world.
I don't either. I'm also not familiar with that that usage. Let me do a. I won't
Second
do
world problems.
I,
You know, I don't want to go there with
are not
politics.
yeah.
disordered evolutions of war games. I'd say that TTRPGs and war games are like ordered evolutions of make-believe. They're ordered evolutions of human imagination. They just have different levels of order in them. So from here, Fool defines what he thinks the goals are of the game. The idea of success and achievement is related to our ability to create changes that empower or uplift ourselves. Players with their characters can achieve similar ideas of success through changing the game world state to be more in their favor. Did they gain a class level? A big boost.
Okay, already I functionally disagree. Because let's say that a player has succeeded on their role to shoot one of their greatest allies in the back of the head.
Okay.
Has that made the game world state more in their favor? No, but it might be something that player character does because they want more money out of the arrangement. They want more. They've made the thing actively harder, and it might lead that one action, that one success, may lead to them dying later down the road because that ally wasn't there to save them later on. So I think there's there's with that winning the game aspect here
Well,
that's a
Sierra
problem.
Madre. I call those Sierra Madre games,
Yeah.
where you start with 3 or 4 characters, and at the end of the session, you're down to one guy, and it turns out there's no gold. You know,
I need to watch you play that because I love that DLC for all its issues.
I couldn't get. Did you play that one in Fallout New Vegas?
Yeah, I played all of them.
Okay, is your character supposed to die in that one?
It's very difficult to get out of the end. It's
Because it became too much of a puzzle game for me, and I couldn't. I don't like puzzle games.
yeah, it depends on how your character is built. It's less of a puzzle if you
But I got trapped in the vault, and it just says, "You die. You die from starvation." What?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm
But-
thinking, okay, well maybe I can just leave this place without going into the vault, without
Yeah, you
opening the
can. I
vault.
think
But
that's the
they force
hardest
you.
one.
They force you to basically. The quest marker says go into the vault. Okay, I don't want to go in the vault. I just want to
Oh
leave
man,
this
the
place.
quest markers are so bad in New Vegas. I think it must have been one of the last minute things they did.
But you get this one warning. If it says warning, if you turn off the security, the elevator you came down in goes up, and you cannot ever get it to come down again.
Yeah.
So are you sure you want to do this? I'm thinking, I save, and then I say, yes, I'm sure. Then I'm trapped. And then I say, okay, I go back to my previous save, and I say, no. And then you can't go anywhere. You can't do anything. You're railroaded into going into the vault. Then you look around, you read the logs that are left behind by somebody, and that's when the door behind you locks, and you can't open it.
Yeah.
And there's a power generator, and it says you need a skill of 100 to activate this power generator. And I'm guessing that's how you open the vault to get out again.
Yeah, you can do that, or you can succeed in a speech check with Elijah to convince him to come down there and fight you in person.
Okay, so I didn't know how to even talk to him,
Yeah.
because he wouldn't talk to me after I got Serana's character to even use her voice to open a voice lock for me to even go down there.
Soft locked by a bug or something. That's possible, I suppose.
Maybe.
I don't know. I'll have to watch. I'll watch and comment on that. Yeah.
Anyway, so I uninstalled Fallout New Vegas right after that happened. I didn't care anymore about how this DLC ends. I rage quit Fallout New Vegas for the third time.
It's a game that can definitely.
I went back to
do
playing
that.
Fallout 3 the next night.
Yeah, that's a game that can do that if you run into all the right bugs in the right order. But
Yeah.
that's
A lot of bugs in
It's a
that.
very buggy game. It's very
Even with
unfinished.
bug fixes.
Yeah, I mean, you need to download like Josh Sawyer. I mean, the lead developer. He has his own mod pack for it, where he was like, if we had infinite time, here's all what we would have tried to fix and get done
Yeah.
here, and that makes it a lot better. But yeah, on the topic of success doesn't necessarily make the world more in the favor of that character. It just means they succeeded at that particular action.
Well, don't most players think they succeed if they got to level up in the session?
Yeah, but then we're talking about the players and not necessarily the what an RPG is.
Well, they're not playing the game. They're not playing the RPG. They're playing the meta stuff.
Yeah.
And they're
That's
playing
what-
they're playing the good listener because the GM's telling them what their characters do.
Yeah, and that's sort of what I'm getting at is
Like, what kind of
This
a
is-
game is that?
if you're playing this in a more meta way, then I suppose they are more similar to war games. But if you're playing your character, then you know,
Because the meta would be the players know to keep quiet and just listen to the GM say how amazing their characters are. And if they're quiet and don't disrupt, they might get some XP at the end of this.
but maybe maybe your character succeeds at sneaking into a room they shouldn't be in. It's like, okay, great, and then but that sets up now the scenario that they can fail in the future while they're picking through a desk, and whoever owns that room walks in on them and it's like, what are you doing? And now the scenario's totally not in their favor, all from that single success. So it's
Yeah, NPCs are in motion. They're not just vacant.
yeah, so that's one success one success in a vacuum can mean that you're sort of digging your own grave in the future.
Like there's like three kinds of players though. I don't know which one would be the worst of the bunch, but you got the one player who wants to he wants his character to sneak around, but that's not even something his character would ever do. But for some reason that's what the player feels like doing now.
I blame
Because he
Skyrim.
he heard there's a sneak rule in the game.
Yeah, I blame
Then there-
Skyrim fully.
Then there's the other. See, I never use sneak in the game. If I sneak by, hey, yay! But I don't like level up to do sneaking.
Oh, it's
Then
it's just that game has it's so easy. You don't need to be good at sneaking to sneak
Right.
around in Skyrim. So it's just I think it's
Yeah, everything's
ingrained, that
kind of
behavior.
everything's kind of watered down, so anyone can do anything in that game.
Yeah.
That's why you mod it so it's everything's super hard.
People can
You haven't
actually
practiced.
see. Yeah.
Then there's the other kind of player who wants to sneak around for lulls.
Aimlessly.
They think it's funny, whether their character is a sneak or not.
Yeah.
They think, oh, this would be funny. I'm going to sneak into the boss's office and steal money out of his safe just for lulls, just for the heck of it. And then there's the other one who wants to sneak in the office, and they might actually be a sneak. But what's their motivation still? Just that they're a sneak?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, this is a place I can sneak around in? Okay, I'm going to sneak around and steal everything.
Yeah, it's the highest number on my character sheet, so I've got to use it, even if it doesn't make any sense to use it right now.
I mean, you're stealing from, some mega death lord. I'm just going to steal from, I'll just steal his stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, the stuff you pick up, are your fingers well protected, or will your hands burn off at the stub of your arm? the minute you try to pick up something that
You know,
belongs
maybe
to
you
him.
succeed, you get this cool, nice magic amulet, you put it on, you're wearing it around, you wear it around town, and one of the guards is like, hey, isn't that, and now, and so yeah, so I don't know even at the first point that I agree that, oh, success, makes the game world state more in their favor.
Boost in personal power, then they have been more successful than someone who didn't. Did they gain in-game wealth or influence important events? That's another dimension along which they can achieve success. Well, that's not my goal when I'm playing an RPG.
Exactly.
I agree.
A film
I agree
or a
1,000%.
1000%.
Yes, exactly.
1000% with Tomb of Lime.
That's, and that's again with the thing, the definition of a game, right? A war game has a pre-stated, your goal is to wipe out the
Victory
opposing
points.
forces. Your goal is to cross this river. Your goal is to take this town.
Yeah.
But with an RPG, the pre-stated goal is, well, I mean, your group's going to have a goal as a party that they, state in the, which, Sierra Madre is to, all four of you are trying to get out of there. But you may have individual goals, which are to, also get the money out of there, or kill Elijah, or what have you. But the game itself doesn't have a goal in an RPG. In an RPG, there's no you win success state, right?
Yeah, there's no I mean there's a quest, but it can be accomplished anyway, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
You can do a truce if you want. Hey, let's not fight each other anymore.
Yeah.
But the rules say you have to fight to the end, fight to the death. In a Temple of Doom situation,
Yeah.
no, not Temple of Doom, in Beyond Thunderdome, two man enter, one man leave.
Yeah.
I guess you have to fight to the death if you're in that situation. You can't just talk to the guy you're fighting and say, can't we just be friends? Let's team up and kill the anti-main character.
Yeah, it's not exactly like that, but in Conan, where Conan the Destroyer, I cannot remember the name of that character, but she's got the spear and she's
Isn't that the same? That's the same story every book, right?
Yeah.
He basically just cleaves anyone in front of him. Every paragraph, he's cleaving at least two guys to death.
But I'm thinking about the specific scene where the woman with the spears chained up and she's fighting off all these dudes, and then
Oh, she's chained up?
Yeah, she's chained
That
by
sounds
one
cool.
ankle.
Oh, that's
and then,
cool.
And then Conan comes by with a sword and he looks at her and he looks at the guys and everyone stops fighting for a second and they're wondering if he's gonna kill her or if he does what. And he swings his sword down and chops the chain off and then they start fighting. Things like that.
Sounds like a scene from a movie.
Yeah, it was from Conan the Destroyer.
Oh, it was in a movie?
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about a book.
It may have been in the book. It's been way longer.
I only
since
saw the
it.
first movie in the theater.
Yeah, the later ones aren't as good, but I think they're still worth a watch. But
I saw the first movie at San Diego Comic-Con in 16 millimeter
wow, that's cool.
before it was in the theater.
I need to see if my I have an old Sears Super 8 projector. I need to see if it still works.
It probably would. Don't let it scrape up your film, though, because there might be a lot of dust
Yeah,
inside the thing.
yeah.
Play, like, is the more successful actor the one whose character wins the duel, or is the more successful actor the one who plays their character better? If my character suffers horrendously or even dies in a session of a game, but I played them close to their character concept, consistent with their character, and I role-played them well, then I would consider that to be a successful role-play session. A participant who is better at executing the game to achieve excellence within the game world is considered an excellent player. Well, not in my game.
Not in my game.
Players who role-play well, regardless of whether they achieve excellence in the game world, are what I consider to be excellent players. And, those are the players that I want to play with. Those are the players that I want to watch because I see their characters come to life. The high
Right. And, back to the war game thing, a war gamer playing, Mussolini, playing Italy during World War II, would be smart and just not attack Greece because they're a neutral country. But a role
Yeah.
player would go, well, I need to attack Greece because I need to show my dominance and show my value as a country. Or, there are places here that are actually, were part of Rome at one point, so I need to reconquer them and make them part of Rome once again. Or they're, Italian diaspora living in these, or, let's go conquer Ethiopia because that's what all the all the European powers are doing is carving up Africa right now while they can. So those things aren't necessarily smart things to do, but it's what the character of Benito Mussolini did.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that was clout for him going
Yeah,
into
yeah.
Ethiopia.
Yeah, and it totally
Look what I
backfired.
can do. I can beat up a third world country.
Yeah, and then it did. Then it got Greece, and it totally backfired because now Germany's having to send people all over the place because Italy has no air force anymore because they blew it all up flying over Greece, and now Greece is pissed at them
So
for.
so you played war games, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. Do you remember how you felt when you were losing?
Yeah, I mean, it depended on if it was a close game or, a lot of the times in a war game, something you do in war games that you would never ever do in a tabletop, in an
War
RPG
of attrition?
unless it was really bad, is the moment you realize things are starting to go bad, you give up and you reset the board.
Okay, I haven't done that.
Oh, well,
I haven't done that.
you like
I'll
run the
sit there and
mental
I just
math.
take it.
You run the
At
mental
first,
math and you're like, well, I could spend 30 more minutes trying to claw back a victory, but I'm probably not going to get it. So just reset. We'll just play it. We'll spend those 30 minutes playing a new game that's, hopefully closer. Their first three
yeah,
turns have been all hits. Your first three turns have been all misses, and it's just like, well, it's snowballed too far out of control now. It's my men are all routing. None of them want to do what I say, anyways. And yeah, okay, this is you brought armor, and I don't have any. I only have these crappy World War One anti-tank guns, and yeah, no, I can't do anything about this. But
yeah, because you can do the war of attrition thing, but then it's the point of no return after a while. It's like, well,
yeah,
you start moving your guys as kamikazes or whatever.
yeah, and
Just take it.
it's
Just
not
take
very
it.
interesting to lose in war games when that snowball has happened. But in a role playing game, it can be really interesting to play that final last stand in the thing you aren't going to win. Uh, I don't know if you've ever played any of the Halo games, but in Halo Reach, the iconic final mission, which is just objective survive, and you can't. You eventually the planet gets glassed,
Oh
but
wow.
it's still a fun thing to play, knowing that you're going to lose. Is just trying to survive as long as possible. 'Cause, yeah.
But let's see the Halo thing. My brother played a lot of Halo RTS.
Oh, Halo Wars. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, on the Xbox.
Mhm.
So I'd sit behind him and watch him play that all day.
Yeah, I forgot that came out. Yeah.
It's like 10 different armies, and you can do like AI. You can
Something like
join
that.
up with an AI or something.
Uh-huh.
It was interesting. There's like a guy floating around in a chair. He was the commander of his army.
Yeah. In skirmish games, I think it's easier to get, kind of connected to individual characters, but it's when in a war game, a six comes up on a die and it's oh well, that, and you chuck that guy off, or you roll him over because he's been injured or whatever, and it's like, that sucks. And I'm thinking that sucks because now that guy can't shoot back. I'm not thinking, oh no, I loved that character and it sucks to see him dying now because he didn't exist 10 seconds ago. Yeah, no.
Yeah, I would root for somebody that just got unified or whatever, and he goes
Yeah.
off, and I'm thinking, yeah, do it, kill it,
Yeah.
become a veteran. Oh,
Yeah.
he's doing it. Yeah. I do that with StarCraft or Total Annihilation.
Yeah, like in Mordheim, my favorite Games Workshop game. Whenever you have your units would gain XP after a skirmish, and then sometimes your like regular linemen could rise up through the ranks and become like specialist units and stuff like that. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, you went from lineman number 7 to Jeff. I don't know, you have a name now. I kind of care about you. And then when that guy dies, you care. But when lineman number 7 dies, it's like, whatever. I'll buy a new one.
Make a new one.
Yeah, as much as it sucks, is dang it, that guy cost 30 gold. I'll have to.
So, are you old enough to remember how D&D's games were first played? As far as war game wise, you got war games are mostly 2 players, blue versus gray kind of thing. But then D&D shows up, and now it's 2 players. It's like 2 teams against each other. You got the player team, then you have the GM team. The GM's
with the
trying to
collar
kill the
and-
player characters.
Yeah, it's actively antagonistic, but it's
Like here's the dungeon. Good luck going through my dungeon. I'll be trying to kill you guys.
the
You're gonna be
first
trying to kill my
few,
guys.
Games of 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons that I played were very much like that, and I
Okay.
thought
What year was that?
2011, 2012.
What? They were still playing that way in the 2000s?
Oh yeah. Which I mean, we're high schoolers, so take that with a grain of salt, I suppose. But no, yeah, and I thought it was really pointless because I was like, well, if the DM wanted to kill me, though, they just could, because they can.
Lightning from Zeus
Yeah,
strikes you down.
Well, we would always joke about the rocks fall, everyone dies joke, right?
Yeah, the
It's
cave
like-
in.
Yeah. It's
You just
like-
go into a tunnel and cave
Yeah, because
in.
at the end of the day, the GM could just go like, "Oh, what are the rules for a cave in?" And it's like you take 30 d6 damage, and it's like I only have 10 health, and I
Yeah.
think 30 times.
So that was D&D 3?
Yeah, 3rd edition. Yeah, and that
Okay.
that's where you get a lot of like.
Maybe that's why you were doing it that way, because you were playing 3rd edition. Maybe 3rd edition had those kinds of rules in it?
Yeah.
Were the GMs trying to kill everybody?
Yeah, well, and also like the
Or the adventure modules?
Yeah, it was very unbalanced. So you also had players that were trying to win too, and I think when you have when you have a player that's trying to win, then you have a GM that's also trying to win now. Otherwise, you kind of don't have a game. Or
Yeah, the so-called power gamer who basically min-maxes, but
so then
a min-maxer is just following the rules when they make their characters.
yeah, exactly, and it's that's why 3rd edition didn't stick around very long. It became 3.5 and then Pathfinder because it needed a and even Pathfinder needs some tweaks to be a playable game as far as balance goes, at least.
Because I was going to say when the 2nd-gen RPGs started coming out in the mid-'80s, that's when you no longer saw GMs trying to kill their players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the players had sort of purpose in the game now, other than just come in my dungeon on my map.
Yeah.
Do a hex crawl as I try to murder you.
Mm-hmm.
It was more like, well, we don't really do hex crawls and we don't use minis.
Yeah.
And you're the hero. You're sort of like heroes now
And that
instead
was-
of just.
That was only one GM out of a few that I had, but I can't remember much from I only remember the bad experiences from that time. I don't remember any that was.
Well, D&D 4 was mostly,
Yeah.
I don't know, the D&D version of WoW at the time.
Yeah.
How
Played a
can we
little-
compete against WoW? I know, let's make D&D look like WoW.
Yeah. Played a little bit of 13th Age when that came out after that. And that game did a pretty good job of stopping people being totally antagonistic, because I think it has a lot of mechanics for building in connections between the player characters and the world, and important the icons, they call them. So I thought that was cool. That was a good way of already showing these characters that the GM controls are not you're good friends with them, so it's already telling you right off the bat, the GM's not your enemy here necessarily. They may play your enemy sometimes, but they're not, yeah. But I think that's an interesting thing. Some people may see that, oh, this game has no goal. Well, the goal must be for me to, kill the players then, because that's how board games work, right? Somebody's got to win.
Well, a lot of these guys came from the war games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They sold war games at game stores before role-playing games showed up.
Yeah.
I mean, back in '78, how many role playing games would there be at like the command post
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And
that sold only war games?
yeah.
And then you see Traveler, Space Opera,
But I would even,
maybe
even when I
maybe
played,
all the D&D books, maybe.
even when I played war games, though, I would have issues with the like. I found the best list because this covers X, Y, and Z, and then this covers X, Y, and Z, and then now you don't have anything, and I'm like, well, so what? You just play that army over and over again against other people who just play that army over and over again. I want to try this unit, and you'd bring some anti-armor unit, and they're like, that thing sucks, and it's like, okay, but I've never seen anyone use it. I want to see if it sucks.
Yeah, that was me. I was always trying out the units that no one ever uses.
Yeah, or just stuff as simple as like I think the model's cool. I want to.
Yeah.
I want the model to be out there. Or.
Like in Total Annihilation, there's units you can build, and you think, oh, I wonder what it shoots. Is it fast? Is it
Or the people
defensive?
Metagaming and like, oh, that guy's got an army that's bringing a bunch of armor, so I'm gonna swap out all of my armor. And it's like, well, hang on, we don't have anything that we don't know what's going on before the game starts. So
Yeah.
But you're not locked into that army or anything. So it's just and you get into the ridiculous things of like, oh, that guy's switching out all of his units for armor unit. I'm gonna switch out mine for air, and and it's just like, okay, we need to eventually sit down and play the game at some point. And
Well, you have to say what the situation is. What's the scenario?
exactly, and
I need to know what the scenario is first before I start putting any pieces down.
yeah, and that's why you have so many rules for
Or
placement
how
and
many
stuff.
how many points does each side get to purchase units?
And you need more and more rules for things like that when there is a goal and you do know exactly what's good, because when there is a stated win state, you can plan for most eventualities between then and there. But
So in your games, what was it usually? A capture the flag kind of a thing, or capture the command base, or just kill everything that moves?
Well, for like Mordheim, you have a roll 2d6 and it's randomized. So there's like a few different scenarios you can have. You can have an ambush, and one side has set up an ambush, and the other side has to defend. You can have both of your armies were scavenging, and they just happen to come across each other, and so there's stuff you can scavenge for to.
You know what a good translation, or I guess conversion of war game would be Command and Conquer, the first.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's basically you're presented your operations mission or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
Send a guy over to this building and steal some secrets, and if you can do that, you win that little mission.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what all your other tanks and nukes were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess the AI would try to just defend itself the whole time. I don't think the AI was good enough to actually do missions against you.
But there's also no lasting consequences for war games, right? Mordheim's like a rare exception I could mention as having some RPG elements of what happens during one skirmish then carries on over to your next one. But most war games you play it as a game and then knock all the pieces
it's
down
a 90-minute, 2-hour game, and that's it.
Yeah.
You count victory points at the end, and congratulations.
Yeah. So
Maybe you take
Yeah.
turns the next time playing the other side.
Yeah, and then even more as a commander, now you're not worried about I can win with a single man left and then we've won, because it doesn't matter that well, maybe you have to fight the next battle with a single man. No, you just set up all the pieces again and then
Across enemy lines.
Yeah, so it's like the success at any cost idea from war games doesn't really, or at least shouldn't, transfer over to role playing.
Well, okay, like Clint Eastwood had to sneak into Russia or something and steal the jet, Foxfire or Firefox, whatever that movie was called.
Yeah, something like that. I never watched it, but I know what you're talking
So
about.
he had to sneak in there and get it, and then the rest of the movie was him trying to escape, and the Russians are chasing after him, trying to shoot him down.
Yeah,
I think that's what it was. I haven't seen the movie.
sure.
it came out around this time as same time as Red October and
Mm-hmm.
Blue Thunder. Those were the things, you know. Kit, I blame Kit for that. The talking car.
Yeah.
Movies had to do the same nonsense.
Yeah.
Highest achievement we could envision is absolute mastery over the game world from within its own confines. This principle best captures the TTRPG's telos. The telos of a role-playing game should be good role play. If a character does attempt
Stop,
some
stop,
sort
stop.
of in-game, you know,
That Rule of Thule, or whatever the guy's name is, he never mentions roleplay in his article. He only
No,
mentions
yeah,
TTRPGs
At least none in the
and
not
fun
movies,
and games. But at Tomb of Lime, I like that he mentions, he brings up roleplay in a roleplay video.
Yeah, and this, you know, this says a lot about we. I know he's probably using the royal we, but, you know, the highest achievement we could envision is, you know, don't use
Well,
your
he
own,
he writes his blog as though everyone agrees with what he
yeah, I
says.
was about to say, don't use your own imagination for everyone else's, right? But,
He's supposed to say, it is my highly regarded opinion on the subject that this is truth.
mastery over the game world from within its own confines, right? What does that really mean? That's just sort of wargaming is all you're talking about, which, I mean, you've set out to compare war games to
Well,
tabletop
he
RPGs.
starts out his little thesis as being TTRPGs are at least war games.
But the confines, I mean, okay, every RPG I've ever read has a rule 0 which says the confines are whatever the GM says they are. So what is the I don't even know what this means because it looks different at every single table, right?
The guy who wrote this article, I don't think he can roleplay out of a paper bag. So
But I'm
his
I'm addressing
frame
this
of
argument in a vacuum.
his frame of reference is way
This
what do they call it?
rigid.
Well, his confinements and constraints are imaginary in his own head.
Yeah. Which, like, the only way I can envision this being, like, close to true is if you only play rules as written.
Yeah, if he played games, if he played, I don't know, if he played TTRPGs regular, like normal, with normal people,
Yeah.
not whatever, philosophical, whatever, game theorem types, he would have realized that what he wrote is meaningless, makes no sense.
this principle best captures
When I saw this on BLG,
Mm-hmm.
I thought this article is just a big nothing burger.
Yeah.
Because
I
usually
mean,
when you say something like TTRPGs are at least war games, you have to then back up your thesis or whatever.
but so far the frame of reference is only self-referential. It's we
Yeah.
have no
I mean, doesn't
cite
he
your
watch
sources,
YouTube?
you know.
Watch YouTube videos, and you'll see how TTRPGs are played. At
Yeah,
least the
yeah,
Hollywood Squares versions of these
like,
games.
Thus far, I mean, how many examples have we given, you know, so far? We've given like 4 movies and, you know, a couple of, you know, personal game experiences.
Oh, when I do a VR, I constantly add to what I'm watching.
Yeah, but you know, this Thule guy has not given an example of anything. He's a general writing rule of thumb is for every 2
Yeah,
bits of your own opinion you add,
yeah.
cite a source. Right?
Yeah.
Give us a fact to back this up. And so
Yeah,
far,
you're writing an essay, you gotta,
so far,
know
this-
your audience, that kind of thing.
that now he's got conjecture that's stated as if it were fact, but
Yeah.
I would.
I've researched this, and
yeah, I would.
I am now relaying this information to you,
I
passing it to the next generations.
if I were editing this blog post, which I know I'm not, but I would have a lot of flagged citation needed.
Okay, Wiki.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you're writing a blog and you think people are reading your blog and you think you're so amazing at writing your blog, and then you're living in your own little bubble, you kind of lose sight.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know.
Well,
You're
it's,
not
I mean,
communicating. You're not.
I've-
You think you're communicating to the world, but it's just you writing
it's a
to
problem with
yourself.
the written language too. Take it from a writer. I wrote a few blogs on the historical European martial arts stuff for a time, and then eventually was like, "Whoa, hang on! It doesn't really make any sense to on something that's visual and active and involves a lot of movement. You're gonna do the slowest, most static media possible to talk about that."
Yeah.
Tabletops also they're in motion, right? I don't know that writing about tabletops, unless you're literally writing the rules about them, is necessarily the best way to go about them.
Yeah, I used to blog until I realized, hey, there's something called YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. It's a now,
I still have my blogs.
yeah. Yeah, you can
Maybe I'll update one of them. Who knows?
yeah, writing has its place. It is but writing has its place when I'm going to put a bunch of links and citations to different stuff that I'm talking about here, because that's more of a pain to do in video format. But he's not doing that. This I wish this blog was a video, so that the video with another person, so that I could ask, what do you mean by that?
Well, I think he might post this link or something on his X page or something, and then
Yeah.
people can complain and say, "You're wrong. You're wrong."
Yeah. But that's the problem with writing, especially writing comments, is just people talking over each other, which does happen in streams, unfortunately. But I find
Yeah.
people are less likely to talk over each other when, and this is relevant to tabletops, when one, it's in person, but two, we have our cameras on, right?
Yeah, I know a lot of bloggers don't turn their cameras on in YouTube videos because they're mostly writers,
Yeah.
and they
But if you were if I only knew you as a circle with an S, it would be way easier for me to just trample all over you and be like, that's not a person, that's a circle with an S that's talking to me. Yeah, right now. Whatever. Shut up. Get out of here. Let me say what I'm gonna say. And that's a studied phenomena that when people are anonymous online, they're way more willing to just totally talk out of their ass.
yeah, you don't see their face, so you don't know if
Yeah.
maybe they're just being snooty or sarcastic or gregarious or
Flipping.
facetious or
Yeah.
tongue in cheek. You don't know because they don't have their camera.
Yeah. You know. And you also don't respect whatever the other person's saying, because it's like, you just right click, turn off notifications, and then go back to your workday.
Yeah.
I'll do that occasionally.
But see,
I'll go into a group where I know someone doesn't agree with me politically, and I'll say just totally the opposite. And it's an opinion I do believe, but it's one I know where I'm going to get 90 notifications about, how dare you, you can't say, and I'll just turn off notifications and I'll go about my day. But it's important to know that there are people like me out there as far as the written language exists.
Yeah, when I write stuff, I write as best as I can, and then I have an editor look it over and see if what I want to say is being said. Because sometimes I'll subconsciously go on a tangent that has nothing to do with what my book subject is supposed to be about.
Yeah, and that's when I as an editor have to ask, is this important? If it's important,
Yeah.
I'll leave it in, but read this to make sure it's important.
Because when I wrote my book, it had 3 points of views. Basically 3 kinds of books kind of merged into each other. So my editor was like, this is really cool, but I think this belongs in a totally separate book.
Yep.
So I said, well, how about a title for that book would be What Could Have Been? And he's like, yes. RPGs, what could have been, instead of what we have now.
Yeah.
So that will be one book one day.
Cool. Oh, yeah. let's see where this
The
goes.
TTRPG's telos. The telos of a role-playing game should be good role play. If a character
Yes.
does attempt some sort of in-game, achievement and success, it should only be because that's what their character would do. And if the character, let's say the character has an addiction or a flaw or some vice, then I
That's
would
even more
say
cool.
that then making suboptimal in-game choices is actually desirable. In a way, excellence and system mastery is only there to help us do that. Unless we take the absolute broadest definition of the word war, any hardship, I'm at war with the branches of the tree I'm climbing or something, then I don't think that TTRPGs are war games. I think it's easy to imagine an RPG that has not a single trace of what war games are in them, but it'll still retain the thing that makes it what it is, roleplay. We've still got goals and we've still got success and failure conditions, but they are not victory in some in-game battle. They are embodiment of character, and they are roleplay for its own sake. And that's to victory or defeat for that character in equal measure. Rule Fool, Black Lodge Games, thanks for the discussion that you've had. I think, it's easy to see that we all have a love of TTRPGs and we want them to be the best that they can be. So I really look forward to, everything that comes out of this sort of discussion. And I look forward to what you guys are doing next. Anyway.
Very diplomatic ending there.
I am so glad this guy is on YouTube.
Yes, what a fantastic fantastic addition recently. We'll have to get him into some games.
Like, how often does a solar eclipse happen in your neighborhood?
Like every 20, 30 years? Something like that. I think our next one's scheduled for 2045 or something.
Technically, the rich folk, they're the solar hippie types.
Yeah,
Every
yeah.
2 years, they travel to wherever the solar eclipse is going to be every 2 years. But for you and me, who might not have that luxury, we just have to sit and wait for it to happen above our house. That's how often a guy like this comes around on YouTube.
And what he says there is something so obvious that I wasn't even at the end of the video there that I wasn't even thinking about, and at the end I was like, man, he's much more he doesn't miss the forest for the trees like I do, which is where he says in so many words, you can have a tabletop RPG session that doesn't even involve combat. So how can it be a war game?
Yeah. And,
Right?
he mentions good roleplay, not just roleplay, but good roleplay.
Yeah, which, indicates, again, back to the Platonic thing, there can not just be a thing, there can also be a good example of a thing, right? That's,
Now,
this
does
is a-
Pluto say stuff like if it's worth doing well or worth doing right?
Yeah, effectively, he's big on oral history and memorization of things, and if you have something, then for it to be like a good orator, a good debater is one that doesn't have notes, is one that can speak off the top of his head from.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
And
Same for GMs. When I was learning how to GM, I was always in
constantly,
panic mode.
down here, and you're like, sorry, what were you doing? What was your character doing? I was,
Yeah, I always thought I'm gonna have to remember all these rules. I'm gonna have to know this whole adventure I'm running. I'm gonna have to know all these NPCs and where they're at and what. It's like relax, relax.
It's really not that important. Yeah,
You should be able to just do whatever's happening in the moment.
Yeah.
At that time, you don't have to know what's happening on the backside of the earth.
Yeah.
The players are not gonna leave very far from the tavern. The way I used to run games, 2-hour session, the players have probably gone down the block. They don't need to be info dumped about, oh, there's a castle miles from here, and there's this dragon nest, and there's this thing. They're never going to see that in the game. Not the way the players play.
Yeah, your big panning establishing shot of all the stuff that
Yeah.
they don't end up going to.
Well, that was neat. I'm glad we watched that, because I was going to do a VR of it. So I'm glad you said you were going to do one of it.
Yeah, and I was going to add on to what he said with this idea of that there's the objective thing, and there's your personal preference or whatever. And I think objectively he covered, yeah, really objectively, a tabletop RPG is not a war game, but also a good role-playing game is not a war game. And it doesn't necessarily cover what good is here, but that something can be good, right? James Hoffman, he's a World Barista Championship winner. He does coffee stuff on YouTube. Totally different hobby. This is related though because he came out with a video recently that was on what's a good cup of coffee, because there might be your preferred cup of coffee which someone else might totally hate, but an orange tastes like an orange. Whether or not you hate that orange is something totally different. That's a totally different conversation, right?
Well, there's orange juice.
Yeah,
That has different flavors.
well, we can get into the weeds of it, but there are objective things we can look at with personal preference even. And that's why all of these models and umming and ahhing about, what the definition of something actually is important. Because if I say something tastes like an orange, and then you taste it and it totally doesn't, well, now your preference has been misled. But we can look at things like, well, I like strong coffee. Well, what does that mean? Do you mean you like bitter coffee? Do you mean you like highly extracted coffee? So it's important to define what we mean by strong. Just as it's important for this Thule guy to define that he thinks a tabletop RPG is like a war game. Fantastic. I know not to be in his games. We've saved both of us headache by defining what it is exactly what we are thinking about these things.
Yeah, well, I've always said that the way most people play TTRPGs is they're playing a board game with an army of one.
Yeah.
And instead of doing platoons or formations, they're doing just what their character does. According to the outline, combat, phased, movement, turn, whatever.
Yeah. And that's fine if you want to do it that way. But the whole reason we have these, the definitional objective helps us determine how to go about, how to find people who meet our preference.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of poisoning the well, right?
Yeah, well, I mentioned first gen RPG, second gen, third gen, fourth gen,
Yeah.
That way I can people kind of know what I'm talking about when I say RPG. Because the tabletop stuff from the 70s, that's first gen adventure gaming. Basically, your character, during their turn, gets to attack. And everything their character can do in the rules is some sort of an attack move. So maybe that's why this Rule of Thule guy says they're war games. Because your characters basically are just killing things when it's their turn.
Yeah, but again, I'd want him to cite something like that. Like, well, look at the character sheet. It's all attacky stuff. Then I'd be like, oh, okay, I see where he's coming from. But, I'd have questions about him, like, well,
you could fit your attacky character on an index card.
Yeah, then I would have questions about later games where it's like, well, what about all these skills that aren't fighting people? How do they fit in with the war game?
Yeah, when did they start showing up, the skills?
Second edition? AD&D second edition?
Okay, so I've never looked at that rule set, so I don't know.
Yeah, you have a percentile for skills.
And the feats, were there feats in 3 or 3.5?
Yeah, feats started in 3.
Okay. What would you think feats are for? Wargaming or for roleplay?
It depends. Because they're separated by group. You have your combat feats, your general feats, your skill feats, your, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, wow. So it's like GURPS. Crazy.
Yeah.
GURPS has traits, perks.
Yeah, it's similar. It's similar to GURPS, but not as freeform. You don't totally lose your mind on decision paralysis, but but yeah, when you there's a lot of this poisoning the well though when that's why we've with coming to the 1D 4D thing with, all right, let's just describe what's out there instead of saying this is what a role-playing game is. This is what a role-playing game should be to us instead, right?
Yeah.
And people, it's strange to me that people have just as much a backlash on that, right? Where
Oh yeah.
where it's like, well, that's always been done. And again, okay, cite your sources, right?
Exactly.
But even if it has always been done, nobody's come up with a name for it. That's a problem, right? Because if you don't have a
Yeah.
name for
Also,
it, you
there's
can't-
no YouTubers talking about what we talk about from like
Yeah.
10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Yeah. And when there's
There's no blog about any of that, any of it.
and you have a problem when someone says, you know, the role-playing games are war games, that's the end of it, you know, they are at least that. Then, well, now you have this baseline expectation that you've kind of poisoned the well, where if, you know, a non
Or you think Rule of Thule poisoned the well?
well, I'm saying in general,
He says it's a war game, so I
he
guess
says it's a war game, so somebody that, you know, I have players that don't like board games. They only play tabletop RPGs. That's the only things they play. They won't play.
What? They won't play Twilight Imperium?
No, yes, it's very
One of the
strange.
best board games ever made.
But
Ever? Either 3rd edition or 4th edition, either one. They're the best board games ever made, in my opinion.
But and I've heard, you know, not one, not two, three, four, five, but 6 times from 6 different people, most of whom are women for what that's worth, but that's maybe a topic for another time. That until they started playing with me and my groups, they thought they hated tabletop RPGs and they were really reluctant to join because
Because the way nerd guys would play the games.
yeah, exactly. The way that they had played the games beforehand, that's just what they thought tabletop RPGs were like. And
Did they have a boyfriend or a husband
yeah,
in the
that's-
game with them?
Yeah. Now,
Before or after they started liking
after,
RPGs?
After. Because in all cases, they would either have a boyfriend or husband that played in my game or that played tabletops in general and were friends with me.
Because usually what I've seen is when the girl shows up to a game, she's usually with the boyfriend or the husband. She's a role player. She wants to have relationships with her NPCs.
Mm-hmm.
The guy with her, he defaults to doing that as well.
Mm-hmm.
He's not there to do combat sessions.
Mm-hmm.
He wants his character to role play.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, his wife or girlfriend will just not show up anymore.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if he's hoping the other guys will start role playing their characters too, or if they're still going to be, oh man, she's in the game tonight. Oh, there's no combat
Yeah.
happening in this session.
But you know, I've also had, you know, a few a few of my other friends, you know, after a while of knowing them, they say like, so you do this tabletop RPG thing, huh? But you're like a normal human being.
Yeah, I get that all the time. I get
They're
that all the
like,
time.
The only, and you know, and I'm like, yeah, why don't you play with us? And they're like, oh, well, and then they do end up joining, but it's only after they've known me for a very long time and have
Right.
like tested the waters, because every experience they've had with tabletops has been, it's been terrible, you know. And I'm
Exactly.
like, well,
They'd rather not be in a game than be in a crap game.
yeah, and that's the whole poisoned water, right? When you say, you know, oh, this stuff's been done before. Other people, they play just like we do, and it's like, well, no, they don't. And maybe the players that you have for a session, and then you never see those people again, maybe you've poisoned the well for those people, you know. So it does matter for the hobby. If we care about the hobby as a whole thing, it's pretty important that we, the royal we, are clear that, you know, yeah, there's a lot of difference, actually. We don't all play the same way. No, this hasn't always been done like this.
Well, guys my age who never did learn how to role play, they kind of just gave up in the 80s.
Yeah.
They just did another hobby, like 40K stuff.
Yeah.
Or actual war games. They just
Yeah.
went into war games, because war games were still a thing in the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, they still are. No,
Do they do Napoleonic stuff like Waterloo?
occasionally, the most popular ones now are going to be either 40K or World War II.
Okay, because wherever I go, it's usually oh, it's I want to say it's the Prussian War,
Oh,
the Cossacks or something. What year would that be? Is that 1812?
Yeah, War of 1812, and
I see that, and I see Warhammer, and that's it at the game stores.
interesting.
I haven't seen a
no
I haven't
bolt
seen a
action?
World War II.
Oh yeah, bolt action's pretty popular where I am.
What about is there like contemporary warfare war games played in stores
I've
with
seen
drones and guys with Kevlar vests and
I've seen one. I don't remember what it was called, but I looked over and was like, "Huh, that's neat." But nobody has models for it, so nobody could really join them, and that's
oh, that's probably why.
yeah, I,
Remember Dust? That one came out like what,
yeah,
15 years ago? It's I think it's like 1945 alternate.
yeah, mhm.
So there's mechs in World War
Yeah, and
II.
what is that called? Iron Harvest? Is that?
I think so.
Yeah, that.
There's like video games based on that.
People played that for a little bit.
The Metro or something, I can't remember, but
yeah, Metro School. Yeah.
people play that stuff because the board games had all the figures.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the zombie apocalypse games took over, but that wasn't minis, that was just wooden blocks like Euro games have. You're
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
a pan
yeah, just
end of it's Left
you're
4
collecting
Dead
victory
but board
points
game.
and- oh god.
So everyone has different colored cubes,
Yeah. Yeah.
like the old Risk games did.
But yeah, this yeah, that idea that you've created this whole character and everything, and I'll have people coming that they they're set up to do X, Y, and Z, and then they start playing the game, and it's a totally different experience than they were. Because they're reading the book, and again, circling back around, the book's giving them an explanation of what they're going to see, and then the way the guy runs it is like, whatever. It's just like nodding along. It's like, well, there's not a rule for what you're doing, so all I can say is, okay, that happens, and then move on, and then, please roll attack to split the guy's head open. Wait, that's not what I want to do. That's not. Hang on. And you're just,
I want to say I come in peace.
yeah. Your character though, everything you've done is just set dressing for the story that the GM wants to tell, and maybe there's different outcomes
placeholder
for a win-loss state, but if you can't make any like big changes as far as you go.
I always get a kick out of these games I watch online, where the players, they actually make characters. Can you believe it? They actually make characters on a character sheet. They show up for the game, and then they don't talk for 2 hours during the game. Or if they do talk, they talk the whole entire time in the game about nothing.
Yeah.
They didn't need the character sheet for that either.
Yeah.
It's like they're not even playing they're not even playing the game when they show up in their live stream.
Yeah.
But they'll say, "We're going to be playing Pathfinder."
Yeah.
Like, "Oh, really? Okay, let's watch."
Are you? Yeah. there are so many people I hear that have issues with Pathfinder, and then they'll bring up something, and I'm like, well, that's not how the game works. And then I find out, oh, you had a terrible GM that was just like doing what you don't just like Pathfinder. The GM was the only one with the books, and so he just lied to you.
I get emails every week from people talking about, they want to know about Traveler.
Yeah.
And they'll say, how do you do such and such? And I say, oh, this is how you do it. And they say, wow. I say, what's wrong? They say, well, my GM, he's got us doing this. Like, find new GMs.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You've got people that are, they're led to believe they hate the hobby or they hate a particular game because of, one crappy GM. And, we were talking the other day about, the GM shortage versus player shortage. I think we have a shortage of good GMs, which leads to the player shortage, right? Because again, I've heard it 6 different times just in
Well,
person.
I'm going around saying for the last six weeks now, I've been saying there's a player shortage.
Yeah, yeah, and every time I get
Maybe the bad GMs caused that.
yeah, I think it's that poisoning the well. It's the well, you've come to the table to play an RPG, a role playing game, and you end up
Yeah.
at one of these guys who's saying no, a role playing game is a war game, but they don't say that. They don't they don't say that before you.
No
show
one's
up
ever
at
going
the
to say
table.
that. They're going to say, "Oh, we role play in our games."
Yeah, yeah, but
I've been
you
role
know,
playing for 30 years now.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's okay. 30 years. Oh, I want to be in his game.
Yeah.
Sight unseen. I want to be in his game.
Yeah, and now they've, again, now they're like, well, that guy says he's role played for I guess that's what role playing is. Then this kind of sucks. This hobby's not for me. And then
Yeah, and
no, I've had that. I've had that happen.
so I get emails from those players,
Mhm.
and I'm thinking, okay, how can we fix this? Because this player who emailed me knows the rules. They know what they're expecting. They know the setting. And I'll suggest find a GM that will role play that setting that you know of.
Yeah,
Or better yet, it sounds like you can run the game yourself.
yeah. People are scared to run the game because, again, I mean, those same GMs, they want the. I think a lot of them realize that nobody would show up to their table if it seemed like GMing was easier. So they make it seem like it's such a hard thing. I spend.
I'm prepping. I'm prepping every day for my players. That one guy on YouTube, he runs 300 games a year, he says.
Oh my god.
And he's running 8 games a week.
Hell.
8 different games.
Holy crap.
Maybe the same rules, but just 8 different game groups a
I
week.
think at some point we were running 5 games at a time, and everyone was like, "Oh, holy crap, we need to." And that was like five games from 3 different GMs, and we were like, "We got to cut back on this because the quality is going down in favor of quantity here."
Yeah. So when I hear people saying, even if they say a game a week, I'm thinking that might be too much.
Yeah. There are lots of times where, like last week, I was like, I'm totally out of it. I'd just gotten back home the weekend from bartending my brother-in-law's wedding, and I was like, yeah, I know that was 5 days ago, but I'm not all here. I haven't even been thinking about the game throughout the week, so I'm like, oh crap, I could run, but it wouldn't be good. It's like, and why, I don't need it. I don't need it to eat. I don't need it to make money. So why do it?
Yeah. I remember I was in a game that was 17 weeks long. It felt like only 3 weeks. But he said we played for 17 weeks, so I believe him. I'm shocked that we kept the same players each week. We didn't have the issue where, oh, someone's missing this week. Everyone was like, what do they call it? Everyone was, what is it called when you show up every week?
Punctual.
Yeah, they're punctual, they're serious, making an effort. They put aside time in their life to do it. It's like joining a bowling league, but then you don't come every week. That would be that would be embarrassing. Your team's losing because you're not showing up. But that's how these campaigns are. You're signing your life away.
Yeah.
And I lucked out because I had good players, and it wasn't a chore. It never felt like a chore.
Yeah.
But the moons aligned for all of us to meet every Sunday for 17 weeks.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Every
When I think of it now.
Friday for 4 years? That's what I'm running on.
Every Friday.
Every Friday for 4 years. Yep.
See, Friday, I'd want to do something else on a Friday night.
That's fair.
Do you have a car? You have a car, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, when you have a car on a Friday night, you want to go somewhere. Okay,
we
do
do-
they come over to your place or you go to their
Yeah.
place?
Yeah, they come to my place. Yeah.
Okay.
We do all of our driving around stuff on Saturdays.
Driving around stuff?
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
errands?
You go into the city, going to gun shows, going shooting.
Oh, okay. Not allowed to do that where I live.
Yeah. But on Fridays, on Fridays, when I get off work, the gun range is closed, the martial arts gyms are closed, the what else? I mean, pretty much only bars are open at that point. You know, that's
Okay, like 2 weeks ago, I was driving around at night and I see all these cars in this strip mall. The parking lot's full of cars. It's almost midnight. I'm like, what's going on? Like the Jack in the Box is closed, Taco Bell's closed. You know, I'm looking for a place to eat at a drive-through. Everything's closed, but there's like these cars, like, and they're not just, you know, old jalopy cars. They're not like, you know, Ford Granadas and stuff from the 80s. No, these are like brand new SUV, you know, Humvee, you know, Hummer, the Hummer 5, if there is such a car. They're all in this parking lot. I'm like, what is it, a car show? And I looked, I drive in the parking lot and it's a shooting range, indoor shooting range. I didn't know we had one of those in town.
there you go.
It's like the middle of the night.
Yeah.
No one knows that this is even there. You, from the outside of the building, you can't tell it's a shooting range. It's
That's
not
how a lot of them are.
advertised.
Yeah,
Like
they're
on one side is laundromat and on the other side is a Mexican restaurant, something like that.
Yeah, they're usually tucked away. But yeah, mine closes when I get off work, and all the car meets they're Saturdays. So, yeah, all of my other hobbies are done on Saturday. So,
Yeah, but the gun show, there's a gun show here every 6 months. I guess people go to it because they talk about it on the radio a lot.
I wish they were still every 6 months here. They're starting to be like every other week here, and it's just like, you know, it's kind of crazy. You know, you get that fear of missing out, so it's like, oh, I better go.
Well, it's
And
like
then
a swap meet then.
and then you're like, well, man, these guys they're still trying to sell the same Russian SKS for $1,100 that they've been trying to sell for the last 7 meets, and they haven't gone down on the price. You're like, whatever. I'll be back in, yeah, because here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, we have the biggest gun show in the world.
Really? Oh, yeah.
Biggie.
How old can you be to buy a gun?
I can't remember if it's buy or own. You can own a gun. I don't even know if we have a law on that, but you buy 18 because you have to fill out the federal transfer.
Oh, okay. Because remember Thomas Jefferson?
Yeah.
He wanted kids to have guns.
Oh yeah, I mean, I had my first gun when I was 11 or 12.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I had
it's-
pellet rifles, but those don't count.
It's back there.
Okay.
It's a little 22. But yeah.
I see it.
But yeah, no. I mean, it's really easy. I mean, you literally say we just have federal regulations, so you know, I got this a couple shows ago.
Now, how old is that gun?
1938.
38 Special.
38 Smith and Wesson.
Okay.
You're close. Precursor to 38.
So the 38 Special has a shorter
longer.
thing.
Longer.
It's longer? Okay.
38 Smith and Wesson is this little stubby guy right here.
Okay.
This is the reason they developed a 38 Special, because this is a very weak cartridge.
Okay.
There's a story of Colonel Rex Applegate going on a diplomatic mission to Mexico, and he takes one of these revolvers, and there's a crazy guy with a machete that comes in to attack him, and he goes bang, 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 and the guy doesn't stop. And then the Mexican diplomat that's with him pulls out his Colt 45 and shoots him once, and he drops dead. And so he's like, okay, we need to figure out something better than this.
Well, that's what I hear. I hear the cops would have those guns, but they wanted something better.
Yeah, it wouldn't go through body armor.
What about a 911? Are they better?
1911?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Colt
1911, I mean.
Yeah.
What about a
that's-
Luger? Are Lugers any good?
They are antiques. They
They
ammo
don't make them anymore?
No. There was a company talking about making reproductions a while ago, but they realized that was going to be very expensive.
Expensive,
and,
yeah.
You know, they'd need to sell like 100,000 of them or something like that to break, make any money off of
Kickstart.
it. Yeah.
What about the James Bond gun?
Walther PPK.
Yeah, they're kind
Those are
of like snub nose pistols or
those,
whatever.
those are nice. Yeah.
Are those still new or they're only old stuff?
Walther Walther might still make a version of that. They sure do. They do.
What
still
about the
make that.
Derringer? They still make those?
Yeah, you can get like a Bond Arms, 45 long Colt 410. North American Arms makes one. Yeah, you can get them. They're kind of silly, right? When you have
Yeah.
but some people like them. They're
The women always had like purse guns or something.
yeah. I mean, it's something you could fit on like an ankle holster, or,
Yeah.
shove in a pocket. Whatever. I don't recommend doing that because stuff jangling.
So
around
what's
in
the
your
best
pocket.
gun what's the best gun in the world?
Depends on what you need it for.
See, that's like asking what's the best RPG? in the
Yeah.
world?
What are your purposes, right?
What's the best science fiction film?
Yeah, I like revolvers. I mean, this and its variants were the best selling pistol of the 20th century. So you could say on that margin, it's a pretty good one. For hunting, you could argue any 30-30 lever action rifle. There's an unverified statistic that says those have killed more deer than anything on the planet.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know if that's true. It's probably true because those have been around since, like the 1860s. So, and they're still used today. So I believe it. For military rifles, there's always, again, the other statistic that says, the AK variants have killed more men than, spears throughout all of history.
Oh, yeah. There's like a million of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. But, they all have their advantages and drawbacks and different things.
So when you're shooting in your RPG, are you actually thinking about the gun you're holding, or are you just abstracting it out to I just have a
No,
gun, I
well,
wave it in the general direction,
cause
and I
once
add
you've,
I add my gun skill to my roll.
well, it's once you've we work around RPGs through language mostly. Occasionally we'll have pictures and stuff, but it's mostly done through language. And when you already have seen or interacted with something in person, whenever you talk about it, you're going to remember that actual physical thing you had, right?
Yeah, it's it becomes a part of you.
Yeah. And I think that's why people ask questions, because a lot in RPGs, because if you just say a gun, then people would ask, well, is it like a 1911? Is it like an M1? Is it
Like, does it do this on the top?
Yeah, and they start running through all of the guns that they know.
Can
in
you
their
do
head.
this with it? Can
Yeah,
you
yeah.
do this with it? The what was the one that Custer had? Was it a Colt 45?
He might have had an old army, Colt single action army.
I don't know if that was a dress uniform gun he had, or if it was actual used in combat.
Yeah. So that would have been a. No, he used
A dueling pistol.
used a Colt model 1855.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, found that pretty quick. Yeah, an old cap and ball Colt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I remember in Little Big Band. Did you ever see that movie?
No, I did not.
What was his name? Dustin Hoffman? He plays this guy who lives to be 137 years old. He claims to have been at the last stand where Custer was. He sided with the Indians. It was a good movie. And I just remember the guns they were using. Did you ever see Dances with Wolves?
Yeah.
That one, that's after the Civil War, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Because I think their guns were less prone to breakage.
Yeah, the Civil War taught gun manufacturers quite a lot about tolerances and what you can and can't get away with in design.
Because you didn't have to worry about your hand being blown off when you shot a bullet or something.
Yeah, well, I mean, one black powder got better and more consistent. You know, you didn't have one factory. You still kind of had that issue, but you know they could at least they had testers for it. Actually, they're kind of funny. You'd basically have a musket, and then you wouldn't load it with a bullet. You would just load it with powder, and
Yeah.
then it would have a spring on the end of it. And depending on how far it shot out the spring, that's how powerful they could test that their powder was.
Oh,
And you know, and if
So-
you shot it and then your hand blew up, then you know that's too powerful. We need to we need to dial that
Yeah.
back.
what was the gun where if you shot, you'd get like fire or something shoot in your eyes from the side? Which gun was that one?
Oh, I mean, revolvers will do that because you have a gap here where the cylinder gap.
Yeah.
So if you didn't have this little this little ring here, I mean
Yeah.
it would be going back out the other end too. But you know you have to be careful not to hold it like this.
Don't hold it up to your eyeball trying to aim.
Yeah, no, yeah. No, they're meant to be outstretched with one hand. But yeah, you'll get powder burn if you grip it like that. Trying to make it more stable.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Um,
What about the gun that RoboCop used? Was that a real gun?
underneath all of the decoration, yeah, it is.
It had the muzzle flash coming out the sides and the
Yeah,
front.
this is back when movie armorers would actually use guns and not just CG and the effects afterwards. They
Okay.
took a Beretta 92 FS and put a crazy compensator on it, and then just a bunch of like metal parts to make it look cool. Because they wanted a pistol that could fire in automatic and in burst, which the 92 FS can do. So
Oh, okay.
it had that like futuristic feature that you wouldn't really
Now,
expect.
do
from
you
a
remember the
pistol.
gun in Logan's Run?
Not
That one
off
had
the top of
little.
my head.
It would just go. It would just make a little sound. It didn't show a bullet come out, but these little flames would be blown out on the sides of the gun.
Yeah.
It had a
Yeah,
neat
yeah,
eff-
okay.
It had a neat effect. I don't know if
Yeah.
those were guns or just props.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
What's your favorite science fiction gun?
Ooh.
Of all
Smart
time.
guns from Aliens are pretty cool. Those are based on MG3s, German light machine guns,
Oh, okay.
but they've got the cool. Those are really cool.
They got the
because
99 readout on the back of it.
Yeah, those are really cool because we're like just now starting to actually get some of that stuff. Like there's some of the U.S. military is adopting the little arm that swings out and carries your gun, so you can have a hand free while you're stabilizing your gun on the little arm. And there's a company that makes a back plate for pistols that has the ammo readout on the back, so it reads that every time the slide comes back, it'll subtract a number, and then whenever you put a new mag in, it reads that and refreshes the round count. So it's really cool to see 30 years later there. It's actually influencing gun design.
Hey, my favorite sci-fi gun of all time is they were used in the pilot for Star Trek,
Mm-hmm.
the episode called The Cage with Jeffrey Hunter. He was Christopher Pike in that one.
Mm-hmm.
And they had the phaser guns, and you would rotate the front half of it, and that would set the gun to overload.
Yeah.
And it basically it's going to blow up anything within 100 yards.
Yeah.
And he was trying to get free from some aliens, so he grabs the guns and he goes, "Grr, grr. I'm setting these things to overload. We have 10 seconds." It's kind of cool. And then they did that again in another episode. I can't remember which one. someone had left a overcharged phaser on the ship somewhere in someone's quarters, and they were listening for the noise that they make when they're getting ready to blow up. And I guess Spock or Kirk or somebody grabbed it and threw it down their dumps. They have, like, you know, when you throw trash away on the Enterprise, you just open this door and you throw it down the hatch and it goes down into the furnace. But in that case, it goes out into space. So when the gun blew up, the whole ship goes. I can't remember what episode that was. That was a good one too. So that's the first thing you do in Toys R Us when you find one of those guns is you go, does it have battery left in it? Oh, you set it for overcharge and it goes. And then your mom said, put that back. And you put it back. But it's a cool prop. And I guess the Star Trek Museum is digitizing everything now that it can find from Star Trek using the 360 digital scanners they've got now.
Oh, yeah.
So they put a movie prop or something in front of it, and it digitizes it, and now it's in the archives. And you can use your VR glasses or whatever to look at it.
Yeah.
So I don't know who's paying them to set up that. It's going to be a virtual enterprise that you can walk around in. Not sure how that works.
Yeah.
Because you're not actually inside of an enterprise.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of stuff like that, like the
You're walking on something.
going back to the Domesday preservation project with the BBC museums, because they had all
What are they
the,
preserving?
the Domesday records, which were the first census of England that went back to 1066.
Oh, okay.
The problem is they preserved them all on either, I can't remember if they preserved them on Laserdisc or tape, but either way they thought, oh, we'll move this old fragile paper, 1,000-year-old paper, onto new technology back in the 80s. And then, about 10 years ago, it turns out, that's, we actually moved it to something more fragile, as it turns out. And so they had they've been working on like AI interpolation to fix the broken bits of the Laserdisc. I think it's Laserdisc.
That's weird.
Yeah. That's kind of cool though, because people have been using it to fix like lost media stuff that was only ever released on Laserdisc. But that stuff, if you get Laserdisc that are stored improperly, or even CDs. People always talk about the laser rot being a thing that only affected Laserdisc.
Yeah.
It affected CDs too. You just had to store them in damp,
humid,
in a
cool, dry place.
Yeah, but lots of people, they got
Not
those.
In your flooded basement.
Yeah. And it turns
Not
out a lot
outside.
of people have, it's like, oh, I've got the only copy of the Australian dub of the original Dragon Ball. And it's like, oh, where is it? And it's like, well, about that.
I can't play it on anything. So what's a good thing to store on? Just an SSD or something?
Yeah, solid state's really good. I mean, pretty much the only thing that solid state has to worry about is, putting a big magnet up next to it.
Oh. Looking for magnets next to mine. No.
It has to be a pretty powerful one these days. But on old hard drives, they'd say like, don't put your computer next to even a fridge magnet. But
50-pound magnet.
yeah, I mean, if you like touch that to an SSD,
Nah,
you probably wouldn't be happy. But
I'm joking. It's just a domino with nothing on it.
oh,
It's a blank. I use it for my monolith. It has magical properties because it's from the high tech is considered magic.
Yeah, that's another thing on the setting of D&D. It's nobody
They homebrew the setting, so it's a different setting in each table.
Yeah, but I meant the whole technology is magic thing, because most of the early D&D settings are based on Jack Vance.
Psionics? Where does psionics come from? Is that magic?
Yeah, that'd be.
Or is that genetic code in your DNA?
Yeah, Probably, I mean, it'd be closest to Dying Earth.
I want to know how to make a psionic android, or at least a robot. You know, R2D2, but it's psionic.
Mm-hmm.
They have them in Traveler, so
Yeah. They have them in Pathfinder. You could do that in Pathfinder.
somehow the thing can sense other psionics, or it can be used to talk psionically to you. If it, they don't have to pay for speaker and microphone for the thing.
Pathfinder does something really smart, in my opinion, and says, well, psionics are magic, and magic is psionics. Which is, because that's always the issue that people have with them, is it's like, well, how are psionics different than magic? You know, how do they work? And Pathfinder just says, nobody knows how they work differently, but they work differently, and they are effectively the same in all other ways. It's just, you know, there's just a couple things that differentiate them.
Doesn't he say that using psionics strains your, or fatigues you, or you have to wait again before you can do it again?
Yeah.
The Vancian magic.
Yeah.
Now, in your games, is psionics and the magic, is it the same basic rule, just a different name?
Yeah, more or less.
Doing
they
the
have
same
a different,
thing.
you know, psionics just pull from a different list of stuff. You know, there's different stuff that psionics.
So instead of it using magic, your magic's, what do they call it, your
spell
characteristic,
Yeah.
the psionics is using what, your intelligence or your...
Yeah, I mean, like, it would depend on what class you are, but yeah, I would use, you know, it, you know, a wizard and a.
Or would psionics be its own attribute?
They're psionicists they're all classes, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you'd have
Because in Traveler, you just have a psionic trait.
Yeah. And I know in like Dark Sun, the AD&D module, you could be a psionic class, you know, the scion, but you could also just have a couple of psionic abilities, just like randomly generated to your character.
Yeah, that's how it usually goes. You usually get like the clairvoyance one, the telekinesis one, and the pyrokinesis one, and if you're lucky, you get teleportation.
Yep. There's one that's pretty cool in Pathfinder, which gives you like a heads-up display, and it like tells you the like exact health readouts of your different party members, so you can look at someone and tell exactly how close to dying they are.
Yeah, Traveler has that. I can't remember what it's called though. It's just, you're just aware of your surroundings, really, at a microscopic level almost.
Yeah.
But does the skill make you a doctor who understands what you're looking at, or do you already have to be a doctor to know what you're looking at? Like, well, I'm using my X-ray and I'm looking at you right now. I don't know if you have cancer or not. I don't know if I'm giving you cancer right now doing this to you.
Yeah.
Just, you know, the guy looks at himself. He doesn't see inside, but she can see inside of him. Oh, there is a piece of metal next to your heart. What do you want me to do with that?
I don't know what to do about that, but...
You want me to teleport it out of you? I'll teleport it out of you. Get it out of me. Because maybe a psionic was pissed off at the guy and stuck a fork in his chest. So now he's got this thing in his lung. He's like, oh, what's going on here? Oh, you know.
Everybody's freaking out. It's like, are we supposed to leave that in, or do we take it out?
Yeah, because someone who's psionic can just teleport crap in your body until you're no longer able to walk or breathe.
Yeah.
Oh, this brick. Oh, it's crushing your heart right now. Bonk. What was that? That was an X-Files thing, right? They cut someone open and they found a bunch of knives and scissors and forks in the guy's stomach or something.
Maybe.
Somebody just thought, and it, boom, it was inside his stomach. Slow death. Well, on that note, I have to go eat.
Yeah, have a good bed.
I got Krispy Kreme waiting for me.
we went off the rails there at the end. So I'll,
Did we? What was the title of this one? RPG
it's
preference
VR
versus
Tomb of Lime,
objective good.
Yeah, and it really
This-
stopped at becoming that. But,
This is when you download it and then you edit it into separate videos.
yeah.
If you
I'll
want.
have to do that, or just put in the comments, hey, after an hour 30, we start talking about nonsense.
The after show, after talk.
Yeah. So,
But
hopefully,
I like learning about guns, but I'm still just going to use guns in my games as just movie props.
yeah. That's fine. That's fine.
'Cause
But
I-
it's for me. And
I
that's,
can't. I know the gun rules are they're not too abstract,
Yeah.
but they're just not detailed at all. Because the player who gets shot gets to choose what body part is injured.
yeah.
What stat goes down when they get shot.
Yeah, and then and
No,
that's
you
when it
you shot my
becomes,
dexterity. You didn't shoot my strength. You shot my dexterity.
Yeah, and
My
that's
dump
when that
my
goes
dump
down.
stat is my endurance. That kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah,
But Traveler doesn't have a thing for you shot my intelligence.
yeah.
I guess if you shoot someone in the head, they're just dead.
Yeah.
You don't subtract from their intelligence.
Oh,
Oh, you made me
maybe.
dumber. Or you shot my soch. I'm no longer the Archduke of such and such. Or you
got
shot my
blasted with
education.
Blasted with a bird shot, and now
Yeah.
you're fine, but you're horrifically disfigured now.
Yeah, because Traveler's got the 3 body traits and then
Yeah.
the 3 what is it? What do they call it? They call it the physical, and then they call the other ones the emotional or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Emotional damage, that kind of thing. Anyway,
Yep.
I will see you later, Flame
Yeah.
Zombie
Yeah.
1.
I'll do some more vids on guns in the future for your deliberation.
I want to see a movie prop next time. Do you have any? Do you have any Uzis from Terminator?
No, God. I mean, there was a SPOS 12 from Terminator at the gun show yesterday.
Were the FBI guys standing around it so it didn't get stolen?
No, I mean it's just
They don't do that anymore.
No, I mean that just have guys at the front. I mean, it's all honor. But I mean, if you steal something from a gun show in the South, you have to have a
You get
special
shot.
kind of- yeah,
You get
yeah.
shot before you get to your car.
Yeah. No, it's like I would love one of those, but it's like $6,000, so those are expensive.
Okay.
I'm trying to think if I have a gun that may have been used in a movie. I mean,
I used to have the gun from Blade Runner. It was a prop from Blade Runner.
yeah,
But then I got
want one of
married.
Those are pretty cool.
And I think she has it still.
Yeah.
That was a neat gun. It was the one that Deckard had
Yeah.
with the red laser thing on the front. I'm sure that battery is long dead by
swing
now.
out cylinder, yeah. Those are cool. I'm trying to think. I'm sure. I mean, this I could find like every movie that one of these has shown up in. Because I mean, pick your favorite noir detective film. One of these has shown up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah.
Or, heck, even Bonnie and Clyde probably had
Oh yeah.
G-men walking around with those things.
Yep.
Or the Untouchables. Or, what's another one? Godfather. Or,
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
heck, anything.
Oh, they're probably in Peaky Blinders. I don't know. Any like gang films, stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, this is what they were using before the Colt 1911s and stuff like that.
So what year were those made?
1911s?
No, the one you're holding, that was made in 1938?
1938, yeah. And this would have been a civilian model. They were still used.
So what? So when did the 1911 start getting use?
Well, I mean, they're made in 1911, as the name suggests.
Or did you just get one if you were in the army? You got to keep your gun
It depended. So
if you had one to begin with?
Yeah, they really didn't see a ton of service in World War One as much as people think they did. It was really only officers that got them. Officers, and police didn't get to carry them for a long time because it was thought that like, well, what does a cop need a 45 for? Because a big new powerful
But the
round.
MPs had them, right?
Yeah, MPs
'Cause-
and
Because that's how my dad got his, was an MP.
yeah. But eventually, when they became easier to manufacture and they were making more of them, eventually more and more people got them. But for a long time, they're carrying these 38 Smiths, and then what they had is they just
Oh, I didn't know that.
made the cylinder a little longer and converted them to 38 Special. When the guys were shooting at gangsters, and the gangsters had the homemade body armor, and
Yeah.
these little 38 rounds would just hit them and do nothing, and you only got 5 rounds. So
Yeah.
and then 38 Special, well, they were starting to complain, okay, even 38 Special is not enough, and that's how you get 357 Magnum. And so this would end up getting, there's only like 3,000 of them made, but for a few police agencies. They make the grips a little bigger, they make the barrel longer, they beef up the cylinder yoke and everything, and chamber it for the new 357 Magnum chambering.
357. What about the .44?
44 is developed from there's 44,
I remember that one from Fallout.
yeah, 44 Special. 44 Magnum is developed from 44 Special is developed from 44 Russian.
Okay.
There's Russian Galand and Nagant revolvers used.
Okay, so what's the best bullet in the world?
Oh God, that is
Because then you just need a gun for that bullet, right?
yeah, that's the ultimate argument that people are constantly going.
And
back
you want the
forth about.
bullet that tumbles like this as it goes through your body?
Yeah, that's a consideration.
Full Metal Jacket had those, I think.
The way the bullet delivers its damage is one consideration. Shoot throughs are a consideration. So if you're police or a civilian shooter, you want a bullet that will stop at the person you shoot, not shoot whoever's behind them.
Oh, really? Okay. What about houses? You don't want your bullets going through entire blocks of homes?
Yeah, you don't, if I have to shoot someone, there, I don't want it going into my neighbor's house for whatever reason.
Man.
Uh,
So many constraints. So many.
But if I was a member of a SWAT team, I might want something that's going to go through a car door, or go through.
Did you ever see Black Sunday? No. Yeah, Black Sunday with that Dern guy. What's his name?
No, I did not.
It's about a guy who wants to assassinate everybody at Super Bowl. So he develops this bomb that's going to be
I heard about
on the
this one.
Goodyear blimp. Yeah, Bruce Dern, I think that's his name. He makes this explosive that's going to shoot little pellets. And he's looking at the dispersion of the pellets because everyone in the seats, all 50,000, 80,000 people have to die when he drives the Goodyear blimp into the stadium and blows up anyway. Because he does a test run of the bomb inside of a barn, and every half inch there's a bullet hole in this barn. The entire barn has a perfect distribution of holes that are a half inch apart from each other. I wonder how long it took for some guy with a drill to just go
The whole saw, yeah.
just put every half inch, just random pattern, every half inch apart.
Oh, man.
That took a while to do, I bet.
Yeah.
Unless they bought the wood already drilled and they put together a barn.
Yeah. And then you have
That was a cool scene.
You could have a lighter bullet, which might not do as much damage, but you can fit more of them into a magazine. Or,
Yep.
or into a cylinder, for that matter, if we're talking a revolver.
Yeah.
You could have a lighter bullet that's moving faster, but wind's going to affect it more. You could have a heavy bullet that's moving slower, but it's not going to be... it's going to be harder to shoot at range because you're going to have to lead more.
Okay, so what's the best holster ever made?
Holsters.
Yeah. You're a John Wick person. What does he wear?
Oh, God, most of the stuff they have is custom tailored for that stuff. He does. Okay, so he
Like
has.
James Bond has one that's kind of it's hard to explain, but I guess it's a separate strap thing.
Oh yeah, yeah. And suspended underarm holsters. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That was a big thing in the '80s, having your guns like suspended here. Uh,
yeah.
they're pretty cool, but for me, anytime you bend over, anytime you're having to move your arms around, this is like banging around here, and it's kind of awkward. I
Yeah.
like um I like appendix carry, which is front side of the waistband here.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll hear it called cholo carry. Uh,
What about Back to the Future when it was tied around their thigh?
oh, see, you need something really small for that. That's otherwise you need something really small. It's really impractical to get to. If
Or what did Clint Eastwood use in his Fistful of Dice movies?
well, there they would be outside the waistband carrying, which would have, that's a different.
Was it just hanging from a belt or something?
Yeah, yeah. And outside the waistband holster, the disadvantage those have in the modern day. Back then, you knew everyone was carrying a gun. The disadvantage those have in the modern day is if someone is planning to attack you, or just a random group of people, random shooting, they're gonna target you first because they know you have a gun.
Well, that makes sense.
So if you conceal it, if you do inside the waistband and you put your shirt on over it, then you can hopefully not be the first guy to get shot whenever something like that happens.
I see the commercials of some holster on YouTube. They have a YouTube commercial. This one, it hangs upside down and the gun doesn't fall out of the holster.
Yeah, yeah. You
The
want
gun snaps into it.
all of them should be like that.
Oh, okay.
That shouldn't be an advertising point. That's called holster retention, which is basically it's so that one, it doesn't fall out, and two, that if somebody's like trying to grab your gun from you, unless they pull it straight out of the holster, they're gonna have a really difficult time getting it out. And you
Yeah.
should have a long enough time to, wrestle them off of you, draw your gun yourself. That's why it's always goofy where it's like, people say like, if I saw that guy carrying, I would take his gun from him. And it's like, well, you wouldn't if his holster's any good.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they all should do that. I don't know. There's a lot of different ones. I mean, they all have their own considerations. How easy are they to draw? How easy are they to conceal? I don't.
What's the best machete thing? What are they called for holding machetes?
a sheath.
A sheath.
Uh-huh.
What's the best one of those? Like, what's the best way to wear a machete into Walmart?
I would say on the hip. You'll see people carrying them on the back occasionally.
Yeah, I've seen them on the back.
Yeah, I don't particularly like that because usually if I've got a machete, I've also got a backpack, and I don't want to have to be, fiddling with stuff back here and then getting tangled on branches and stuff. I would rather, have it here
Yeah.
where, I don't have anything else sitting at my hips really, so it's just a natural place for it to sit. When you've got it up here and you've got this handle poking out, and you're walking underneath a low branch, it catches on a branch and then it drops out behind you, and you're like, oh man, and then you're tangled up on everything.
Yeah, at Walmart, sometimes they have a sign saying, no knives in Walmart. Well, the guys just go to the kitchen section and grab a knife.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
It's like fishing, go to the fishing section. I want a buck knife. Oh, we need to see your ID. You need to do this. But then if you go upstairs to the kitchen, boom, there's all these kitchen knives you can just grab if you need a knife.
That, and like Walmart will have the store policy that we don't sell handgun ammo anymore.
Yeah.
But I can buy this online and get it shipped to my house. So
Yeah.
I just know what the point of that is,
Well, I guess they lost customers when Walmart stopped selling bullets because their prices were good.
They had decent prices, and two, it's like, I can go to Walmart on a Sunday, and most gun shops they're closed on Sundays and kind of out of the way. But
Hobby Lobby's closed on Sundays, but I don't think they sell bullets.
no, no.
I think they sell Nerf, maybe.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, but yeah, no, that's no. They used to have good prices. You know, you used to be able to get decent stuff at Sears in the olden times.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I don't know if the Sears around me ever had that stuff. Like no one hunts where I live. No one goes hunting. There's nothing to hunt.
yeah,
There's no life. There might be seagulls at the beach. There might be pigeons at the park. That's about it. There's no bald eagles to shoot at.
you have But yeah, I would
That's
say
if that's allowed anymore.
I would say I like appendix carry the best. They also make pocket holsters for pocket carrying your gun. That just it's basically
Yeah, I've seen those.
It's just an inside liner for your pocket that goes in, so this doesn't wear a hole in your pants
Yeah.
or so you don't fish in your pocket for some change and then
Yeah.
blow a hole in the floor and then
I've seen YouTube videos where a guy shoots himself
oh yeah
because he has a gun in his pocket.
yeah and then it's just rattling around or purse holsters.
All the videos end with the guy trying to drive to the hospital after doing that.
Yeah. Well, I also like if depending on the context, if you're going to carry like a big full size pistol, that would be difficult to conceal. You wouldn't be doing any athletic movements with it. They make basically fanny packs, bags that just you wear it.
Yeah, I've seen those
and
too.
all it does is hold your gun, and so you just unzip and then
Yeah, I always wonder what's in the guy's man purse.
yeah. And then those are nice because you can carry, like, if you just have a holster, then all you've got's your gun. But if you have one of those, you get, your extra mags. Some of them are even big enough, they'll make some backpacks that all it is it's a armor plate and gun holster and all that, and so you switch it around.
Yeah, the guys they walk into the liquor stores with those things looking like part Iron Man, at least on their back.
Yeah.
The motorcycle guys all wear them.
Oh, yeah.
Aerodynamic, I guess.
Yep. And then I would say I don't like small of the back carry. That's something that you see in the John Wick movies.
Well, that's a movie thing, right?
No, people do that.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know how, because if I was sitting here with my gun right here, this is already uncomfortable.
I can't even. I would never even put a phone in my back pocket.
No, yeah. And then if I've got to reach to something, I've got to do this,
Yeah,
there we go.
But there's already a machete cutting your head off before you can do that.
Ankle holsters, I've never tried them, but I hear you can really only fit small guns in there, and it feels like you're wearing an ankle weight, and you'll start.
Yeah,
walking weird. But if you're sitting, in a car, it's there is at least one account of a police officer that he had his own personal gun in an ankle holster, and he had his duty gun in his his normal waist holster.
Yeah.
And a guy comes up to the car with a shotgun intending to kill him, and he realizes that because of the seatbelt, he can't unsheath or can't draw his normal gun.
He can't reach down, yeah.
But he can kick his leg up on the dash and draw his ankle gun. So I was like,
okay.
that's something I'd never thought about. Yeah, because I was like,
well, that explains why I see feet on dashboards. Because I'm thinking, what's that for? Because the seatbelt probably makes them do that.
Yeah.
I watch all kinds of. You watch one weird video on YouTube, and you get recommended all the other ones.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm watching Vaporwave.
Oh yeah.
Music tracks.
Yep.
Abandoned mall music.
Macintosh Plus.
Anyway, I have to go.
Yeah. 30 minutes later, we have to go.
It's one of them Oklahoma goodbyes.
Yeah.
I'll see you later.
See ya. See you guys. Thanks for watching, anyone who did.